Tong Ening. All right, I know. Another confession? It's the same thing every day. Aren't you tired of it? Zhou Heng watched the girl's retreating figure, silent and expressionless, though a trace of indifference flickered in his eyes. The girl was Tong Ening. They had been classmates in middle school and still were in high school. Since the start of high school, Zhou Heng had been pursuing her. Now, in their final year, he had confessed almost daily and been rejected every time. He had become a laughingstock to the rest of the class. Although he didn't care, he didn't want this to continue. So, today was what he had decided would be his final confession. But before he could even get the words out, he was rejected once again, extinguishing the last tiny spark of hope he had left. Oomph! Zhou Heng sighed, turned, and walked into the classroom, returning to his seat. The others were already used to this scene. They didn't even have the interest to discuss it anymore. Rejected again. Hearing a voice beside him, Zhou Heng turned to look at his deskmate. She was a girl with short hair, an oval face, handsome eyes, and well-defined brows. She was chewing gum, her school uniform jacket draped over her shoulders. Yeah, Zhou Heng replied softly, then turned his head back. The girl slung her arm over Zhou Heng's shoulder and said, "Want to go to the internet cafe after school? It's my promotion match. You can carry me." Zhou Heng frowned and looked at her, saying flatly, "Tang Ji, I just got rejected. You want me to go to the internet cafe now? I'm not going. Whoever wants to go can go. My treat, and I'll buy you a medium Coke. You play hard support, and the Coke has to be sugar-free." Okay. After school, it was already 9:30 p.m. Zhou Heng and Tang Ji went to the internet cafe together. Here, Tang Ji placed the Coke on Zhou Heng's desk, then sat down beside him and asked, "How much longer are you going to confess? This is the last year. If you don't succeed soon, you'll lose your chance." Zhou Heng opened the Coke and took a sip, then shook his head. Today was the last time. A person can't hang themselves from a single tree, especially not after I've been hanging for 2 years. Hearing this, Tang Ji looked at him with some surprise. Really? Yeah, really? Doesn't that mean you'll have a lot more time to play games with me? You're overthinking it. My mom told me to study, or she'll cut off my allowance. The two played at the internet cafe until midnight before preparing to go home. When they walked out, they stopped in their tracks at the entrance. When did it start raining? Zhou Heng and Tang Ji stood under the eaves of the internet cafe, watching the light drizzle fall outside. Shallow puddles had already formed on the ground, indicating it had been raining for some time. Did you bring an umbrella? Tang Ji asked Zhou Heng. I did. You? Me too. They opened their umbrellas, said goodbye at the entrance, and walked off in opposite directions. Zhou Heng walked along the dark road. Even with the street lights illuminating the path, the rain made his vision blurry. His mind replayed the scene of Tong Ening rejecting him that day. Even this morning, when he had made his decision, he had held a sliver of hope. They had a good relationship in middle school. Although his personality wasn't very sunny and he spoke little, she hadn't minded and often hung out with him. In the age of first love, he had fallen for her. When he discovered they were in the same class in high school, he thought it was fate and began his pursuit. He had thought his chances of success were high, but reality had dealt him a heavy blow. Her impatient expression and tone today would probably be etched in his memory for a lifetime. Forget it. Anyone would get annoyed. I should just stop bothering her. Suddenly, Zhou Heng stopped. He looked toward a nearby streetlight. A girl was sitting on a step there. She had no umbrella or raincoat, just sitting in the rain. She was wearing a school uniform, which was now soaked through. Her long hair was loose and dripping, but she seemed completely unfazed, sitting there quietly, staring at the ground, looking utterly dejected. Zhou Heng's first instinct was not to get involved. After all, encountering such a situation in the middle of the night, it was brave enough of him not to turn and run. But as he stood there for a moment, he felt that the girl looked somewhat familiar. The girl seemed to sense someone in front of her. She looked up, pushing her wet hair aside, revealing her face. She had a pair of beautiful, almond-shaped eyes, gently curved brows, a delicate, well-shaped nose, and pink, cherry-like lips like a girl straight out of manga. However, her complexion was not good. It was pale, and she looked haggard, her eyes clearly filled with sorrow. It was impossible to tell if the streaks on her face were tears or rain. Seeing the girl's face, Zhou Heng couldn't help but freeze. His mouth fell open, and he blinked in a daze. The girl's eyes widened as well, filled with surprise. They stared at each other for a few seconds before Zhou Heng came to his senses and asked, "In Men Gran, what are you doing here?" The girl, called In Men Gran, lowered her head and replied in a slightly hoarse voice, "It's none of your business." Oh, Zhou Heng nodded and immediately started to walk away. Since she said it was none of his business, he'd just be meddling if he stayed. Zhou Heng had walked about a dozen steps when he suddenly heard the sound of soft crying from behind him. He froze, standing still for over 10 seconds, listening to the sobs, his mind blank. Inmin Gran kept her head down, sobbing softly, oblivious to the cold raindrops hitting her. Even though she was already shivering from the cold, the rain grew heavier, the drops turning into lines, pouring down like a sheet of white silk. Just then, Inmin Gran felt as if the rain on her head had been blocked. She looked up and saw Zhou Heng standing in front of her, holding his umbrella to shield her from the rain. Zhou Heng looked at her with a blank expression. He could clearly see her sorrowful appearance. On her fair face, her eyes were red and swollen, brimming with tears like dew on morning petals, ready to fall at the slightest touch. Inmin Gran reached up and wiped the rain and tears from her face, asking in a choked, stammering voice, "What were you doing?" "Meddling. I already said, it's none of your business," Inmin Gran said through her sobs, unable to wipe her tears away completely. She hiccuped occasionally, unable to form a complete sentence. "Seeing my class president crying here in the middle of the night, how can it be none of my business?" Zhou Heng took a small pack of tissues from his bag and handed it to Inmin Gran. Inmin Gran hesitated for a moment before taking the tissues and wiping the tears from her face. Her eyes and nose were red, and her eyes were noticeably swollen. It seemed she had been crying for a long time, possibly for days. Thank you." Inmin Gran clutched the tissues and turned her head away, thanking him in a small voice. Zhou Heng saw her body trembling uncontrollably. He himself felt cold despite being dry, let alone Inmin Gran, who was soaked to the bone. "My place is right nearby. Come warm up for a bit." After saying this, Zhou Heng reached out and pulled Inmin Gran up from the step, startling her. What are you doing? Leave me alone. I'm not going." She struggled a bit, but Zhou Heng's strength was surprisingly overwhelming. She could barely budge his fingers. He had already pulled her several meters away, and she was completely powerless to resist. "All right, anyone who saw this would have to do something. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to meddle either," Zhou Heng said without looking back, pulling Inmin Gran, who was only half a head shorter than him, as if he were carrying a paper shopping bag. Inmin Gran stopped struggling. She had no energy left, and she realized it was truly impossible to break free from his grip. He wasn't holding her tightly, afraid of hurting her, but she just couldn't get away. A moment later, Zhou Heng led Inmin Gran into a building. He closed his umbrella, but didn't dare let go of her hand, afraid she would run off. But as soon as they entered, a cold draft from the hallway hit them. Inmin Gran's body shivered violently. Now, even if he let her go, she wouldn't want to leave, knowing it would be even colder outside. Once they were in the elevator, Zhou Heng finally let go of her hand. Inmin Gran stood behind him with her head down, her hands fidgeting in front of her. When the elevator reached the 6th floor, Zhou Heng stepped out and said to her, "Come on." "Oh." Inmin Gran didn't know what had come over her, but she answered instinctively and followed him. Zhou Heng opened his door and went inside. Inmin Gran stood at the entrance, motionless, looking somewhat at a loss. Zhou Heng glanced back, sighed in resignation, and reached out to pull her inside before closing the door. Bang! As the door closed, Inmin Gran felt her heart race, and a sliver of fear emerged within her. Zhou Heng walked in, tossed a pair of slippers in front of Inmin Gran, and then went into the bedroom for something. Inmin Gran stood at the door, unsure of what to do. Should she go in or turn and leave? After some thought, she took off her shoes, put on the slippers, and walked into the living room. When she entered, she had noticed that the shoe rack seemed to hold only Zhou Heng's shoes. Now, she realized it was a one-person apartment. In other words, Zhou Heng lived alone. The first thing that caught her eye in the living room was the vast amount of fitness equipment. Dumbbells, barbells, a treadmill, a stationary bike. He had everything. Now, she finally understood why Zhou Heng was so strong. He looked so slim in his clothes. You couldn't tell anything from his school uniform, so she hadn't expected him to be this powerful. The cleanliness of the living room also exceeded her expectations. Despite being full of things, everything was neat and orderly. In front of the incredibly soft-looking sofa, there was no coffee table, but a white plush rug on the floor. Inmin Gran was soaked, so she didn't dare sit there, choosing to stand where she was. After a while, Zhou Heng came out holding a set of clothes, a towel, and a hairdryer. "Here, dry yourself off and blow-dry your hair. Then change into these clothes. They're not new, but I've only worn them once. Make do with them. You can change in the bedroom." He handed her the items and then walked directly to the kitchen. Min Gran held the things, feeling even more helpless. Her mind was resisting, telling her to put the things down and leave immediately. But Zhou Heng's words felt like an irresistible command that she subconsciously had to obey. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to listen to him. She was simply too cold. Her wet clothes were clinging to her body, and the chill was unbearable. She toweled herself off briefly, then used the hairdryer on her hair. It took a full half-hour to dry her long, dripping hair. Afterward, seeing that Zhou Heng was still in the kitchen, she took the towel and clothes and went into the only bedroom. She didn't dare turn on the light, not knowing where the switch was, and closed the door, changing in the dark. Zhou Heng had given her a white velvet top and a matching pair of pants, a set of loungewear. It was the first time Min Gran had worn someone else's clothes. She could even smell a faint, pleasant scent on them. A deep blush quickly spread across her face. Her mind kept questioning herself. What am I doing right now? I actually followed a classmate home and changed into his clothes? Am I really this careless? What will happen next? Am I supposed to sleep here? Maybe I should just warm up and then leave. Click! Min Gran opened the door and walked out, just in time to see Zhou Heng emerge from the kitchen. He had brought out a small table and placed it on the rug. Then, he brought a steaming bowl of something from the kitchen and set it on the small table. Min Gran saw that it was a bowl of noodles. Eat, Zhou Heng said simply, looking at her without any further explanation. Before Min Gran could say anything, Zhou Heng brought over a glass of hot water and placed it on the small table. Hot water, and this is a fever reducer. Take it if you still feel cold or your head feels hot. This is cold medicine. Take it if your throat feels sore or you're sneezing. You can also take it as a precaution. Zhou Heng placed 2 blister packs of pills on the table. After doing all this, he moved away, keeping his distance from the sofa area. Besides saying these things, he didn't exchange another word with her. Min Gran sat at the small table, looking at the noodles, hot water, and medicine, her feelings complicated. Her hands remained motionless. Her first instinct was definitely to refuse. She and Zhou Heng weren't that close. Even as classmates, they were the type who rarely spoke to each other. And now she was in his house, wearing his clothes, and was supposed to calmly eat the food he made. How was that possible? But her body seemed to want her to accept. The feeling of hunger had taken over her brain, constantly sending signals for her to eat. She glanced to the side. Zhou Heng was sitting at another desk, holding a pen, seemingly doing his homework, completely ignoring her as if she didn't exist. Sensing her gaze, Zhou Heng stopped writing and said softly, "You're not usually this shy, are you? Go on, eat. When you're done, I'll lend you an umbrella and you can go." Since Zhou Heng had already said as much, Min Gran had no reason to refuse. She carefully picked up the chopsticks and took a small bite. A warm feeling instantly spread through her body. After that, she no longer hesitated and began to eat in large mouthfuls, though she was careful not to make any noise. 10 minutes later, Min Gran had eaten every last bite. She then drank the hot water but didn't take the medicine, feeling she was probably fine. Afterward, she stood up, took something out of the pocket of her wet clothes, walked over to Zhou Heng, and handed it to him, whispering, thank you. Zhou Heng looked up and saw that Min Gran was holding a 100 yuan bill. What are you giving me money for? I don't want to owe you. Zhou Heng looked into Min Gran's eyes and saw her serious expression. She wasn't joking. He didn't take the money. Instead, he turned his head back to the test paper in front of him and muttered, "If you don't want to owe me, don't give me money. You're not that good at school, right? I don't know how to do this big problem. If you teach me, we'll be even." Zhou Heng tapped a major question on his paper with his pen. Min Gran glanced down and blurted out instinctively, "This is so easy. What's there not to know? Sorry, I'm just someone who can't even do a simple problem like this." Min Gran awkwardly closed her mouth. She then reached out and began to teach Zhou Heng how to solve the problem. Zhou Heng listened attentively, but he had to admit his brain really wasn't as sharp as hers. It took Min Gran's incredibly detailed explanation for him to finally understand. After explaining the problem, Min Gran intended to leave. Although her school uniform had been airing out under the air conditioner for a while, it was still damp, but she had no other choice. These clothes and the umbrella. I'll return them to you when I get to school. Min Gran stood at the door, speaking softly. She had her still damp uniform jacket draped over Zhou Heng's clothes. Her other wet clothes were in a bag she was holding. Hearing her, Zhou Heng finally remembered that Min Gran had been absent from school for many days. She was good friends with Tong Yining, and because she hadn't been around, Tong Yining's mood hadn't been great either. That was probably why Tong Yining had seemed so annoyed during his confession. Just then, Zhou Heng realized something was off. He frowned and asked, "Let me ask you something. If you leave now, do you have a place to go?" He was someone who hated meddling, so he hadn't asked why Mingran was there or why she was crying. But for some reason, he felt compelled to ask this now. He had a feeling that if she left, she'd probably just end up outside again. Sure enough, at Zhou Heng's question, Mingran was at a loss for words. She lowered her head and said nothing. Zhou Heng tapped his desk with his pen and said flatly, "If you have nowhere to go, you can't leave. Do you have your phone?" "No." Zhou Heng took out his own phone, opened the dialer, and asked, "What are your parents' numbers? I'll call and come pick you up." Question mark. Hearing no response, Zhou Heng looked up and saw Mingran standing there, motionless, with tears crystallizing in her eyes. Zhou Heng quietly put his phone down. He realized something was wrong. This reaction, could it be that something had happened to her family? It was the middle of the night, and he'd made her cry in his home. This wouldn't look good, would it? It seemed he couldn't just ignore this situation anymore. He racked his brain for words of comfort or inquiry, but because he was so inarticulate, what came out was so. "What's the situation?" Mingran sobbed for a long time before she slowly spoke, explaining her situation to Zhou Heng. Over a week ago, her parents had been in a car accident and had unfortunately passed away. Now she was no different from an orphan. None of her relatives wanted to take her in, and her grandparents had also passed away. Zhou Heng listened with his brows tightly furrowed. Now he finally understood why Mingran had been sitting there crying alone. She had been absent from school for days, yet she was still wearing her uniform. It was truly too much for her to bear such a tragic event all by herself. "So you have no home to go back to?" Hearing Zhou Heng's question, Mingran looked as if she had just heard something extremely tragic, the grief on her face deepening. Although Zhou Heng wasn't good with words, seeing her expression, he knew he had probably asked the wrong thing. It made sense. If she had a home to go to, she wouldn't have been out in the rain. Perhaps there was some unspeakable reason behind it. The room was quiet, with only the sound of Mingran's faint sobs. Zhou Heng shifted his gaze, sitting on pins and needles, not knowing what to do. Mingran was their class president. She wasn't just academically gifted, but also the most popular, with a cheerful, sunny, and optimistic personality. She was undoubtedly the core, the soul of the class, a good friend to her classmates, and a source of pride for the teachers, the complete opposite of him. And now this person was in his home, cried her eyes out. If she went to school and told the other students about this, he would not only be the class laughingstock, but also the class enemy. Failing at his studies and then being ostracized by the whole class. That would be quite the joke. Right now, Zhou Heng only understood one thing. No matter what, he couldn't let Mingran leave. Knowing her situation, how could he bear to let her go, especially with it still raining heavily outside? Thinking of this, Zhou Heng stood up, walked over, and took the bag from Mingran's hand. With a bewildered expression on Mingran's face, Zhou Heng placed the bag in the living room and said, "Just stay here. You can leave when you have a place to go." Hearing this, Mingran immediately snapped back to reality and hurried over. No, I'll leave right away." Before she could finish, Zhou Heng suddenly looked up at her. His gaze wasn't fierce or scary, but it carried a sense of finality that left no room for argument. Subconsciously, she clamped her mouth shut. Zhou Heng looked at Mingran and said in a low voice, "Either you stay here, or I call the police and have them look after you. You choose." Mingran let out a few sobs, blinked her tear-filled eyes, and looked at him with a somewhat resentful gaze, asking in a small voice, "Is this how you talk to Tong too?" "Huh?" Zhou Heng's mouth fell open, his gaze frozen. He stared blankly at Mingran, at a loss for words. Her expression seemed to say, "No wonder your confessions fail." Zhou Heng knew he wasn't good with words. His lack of emotional intelligence was his biggest weakness. This was true even with guys, let alone girls. Zhou Heng silently lowered his head, unable to respond, looking like a dejected puppy, completely stripped of his earlier imposing manner. "Uft." Zhou Heng looked up to see Mingran covering her mouth and laughing, her eyes crinkling, even with tears still clinging to them. Zhou Heng awkwardly smacked his lips and said, "Just stay here. I'm begging you, okay?" These were the most sincere words he could muster. He tried to force a friendly expression onto his face, but it felt wrong no matter how he tried, nearly giving himself a facial cramp. Seeing this, Mingran laughed out loud again. It was hard to tell if the tears were from crying or laughing now. Zhou Heng thought she was laughing at him mercilessly, so he turned his head away, his face full of frustration. Mingran realized she had gone too far, and her laughter gradually subsided. She stopped and said, "Okay, I agree." Thank you. But why are you helping me? There's no reason. If I have to give one, it's that I don't want my reputation in class to get any worse. Huh? Min Gran blinked in surprise. After a moment, she said, but I haven't heard any bad reputation about you in class. The only news about you is your confessions to Tonton. To me, that is a bad reputation. Oh, aren't you afraid Tonton will be upset if you say that? Whatever. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Zhou Heng shrugged, looking completely nonchalant, without a hint of emotion on his face. Min Gran was a little surprised and asked tentatively, "You don't like her anymore?" Zhou Heng shook his head. There's no point in insisting on something that gets no response. I see. That's good. Have decided to stay. Min Gran hung up her damp clothes. She sat on the sofa, not knowing what to do, looking around for a long time. She couldn't believe she had actually agreed to stay here, in a classmate's home. But this time, her impression of Zhou Heng had changed a little. She hadn't known he was this kind of person before. She glanced over at Zhou Heng and saw that he was still studying. She felt a bit of admiration. For someone who lived alone, he was so self-disciplined, both with exercise and studies. It showed his strong self-control. Tisk. After a while, Zhou Heng started running his hands through his hair, making frustrated noises. It seemed he was stuck on a problem. Min Gran stood up and slowly walked over to his side. She saw that he was indeed struggling with a problem, but the step he was struggling with was something she couldn't comprehend. At least, it was a part she considered very simple. But remembering what had just happened, she didn't dare say anything offensive. She reached out, pointed at the question on the paper, and began to explain it to Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng listened attentively, nodding from time to time. Finally, with Imran's help, he managed to solve the problem. Soon, he finished the test paper. Looking at the time, it was already past 2 in the morning. He now regretted going to the internet cafe with Tang Ji. There was hardly any time left to sleep, and he would have to get up for school in just a few hours. Zhou Heng packed up his things and looked at Min Gran, who was sitting on the sofa. You sleep in the bedroom. I'll take the sofa. Though his EQ was lacking, he at least knew he shouldn't let a girl sleep on the sofa. But Min Gran repeatedly refused. She was already so grateful to Zhou Heng for letting her stay. How could she possibly have the nerve to sleep in the bedroom while he slept on the sofa? No, I can just sleep on the sofa. It's fine. No way. This sofa isn't comfortable for sleeping. You take the bedroom. Zhou Heng was also quite firm. He knew the sofa was not suitable for sleeping. It was easy to fall off and uncomfortable. Then that's even more reason I can't let you sleep on it. You're bigger than me. Wouldn't it be even more uncomfortable for you? All right, this is my house, so just listen to me. It's precisely because it's your house and you're the host that I, the guest, can't sleep in the bedroom. The two of them went back and forth like this, arguing from the living room to the bedroom. Zhou Heng turned on the bedroom light, and only then did Min Gran see what the room looked like. It was clean and tidy, not at all like the bedroom of a boy living alone. And the bed was very big, more than enough for 2 people. Seeing how insistent Zhou Heng was and unwilling to back down herself, Min Gran proposed, then, we can both sleep in the bedroom, right? I'll sleep on the floor. Why should you sleep on the floor? You. They argued again for about 5 minutes. Min Gran found Zhou Heng to be incredibly stubborn. She simply couldn't win against him. Seeing that it was getting later and later, they both knew they shouldn't be arguing over this for so long. In the end, they adopted a suggestion that both of them reluctantly agreed to. In the middle of the large bed, a line of blankets was placed as a divider, splitting it into left and right sides. A deep blush appeared on Imran's face. She had actually agreed to such a suggestion. She was actually going to sleep in the same bed as a male classmate. She sat on the left side of the bed, hugging her knees, feeling a little uneasy. She hadn't realized the gravity of the problem until now. Zhou Heng had gone to change into his pajamas, and only then did it hit her. She was a girl, after all, and Zhou Heng was a boy. Was she really safe sleeping here? Her safety awareness was too low. What if Zhou Heng tried to do something to her? Remembering his strength, she would be completely powerless to resist. After a while, Zhou Heng came in. He was wearing a thin set of ice silk pajamas. His other clothes hid his physique, but in these pajamas, the muscle lines underneath were particularly noticeable. Min Gran glanced at him once and quickly looked away, but her ears had quietly turned red. Turning off the light. The bedroom light went out, and they lay in bed, back to back, with a blanket divider between them. Min Gran was covered by her own blanket, with only her head sticking out, the rest of her wrapped up tightly. She squeezed her eyes shut, but a moment later they opened again. She couldn't sleep at all. Her entire focus was on her back, on Zhou Heng on the other side of the bed. The slightest movement from him, even just turning over, would make her whole body tremble slightly, and she would pull her blanket tighter. Her mind replayed the events that had happened since she met Zhou Heng. He really hadn't shown any strange behavior, hadn't said much to her, and had maintained a certain distance. That's why she had been so trusting, without any suspicion. But now, the distance between them was probably only about 20 centimeters. If Zhou Heng turned over in a big way, he could land right on top of her. In this state, 30 minutes passed. Yin Mingran heard a steady breathing sound. She knew Zhou Heng must have fallen asleep. The heart that had been in her throat finally settled, and her guard relaxed a little. She didn't know how long it had been since she'd had a good night's sleep. Once she relaxed, drowsiness quickly washed over her, making her eyelids heavy. Before long, she too fell asleep. She slept deeply, and even had a dream where she saw her parents walking further and further away. When she opened her eyes and sat up abruptly, she realized it was already morning. Daylight streamed in from outside. It was around 6 in the morning. A flood of memories rushed into Yin Mingran's mind, and she finally remembered where she was. Yin Mingran looked to her side and saw that she was the only one in bed. Zhou Heng was no longer in the bedroom. Then, she heard a sound from outside, which seemed to be coming from the kitchen like someone was cooking. Yin Mingran got out of bed. She was still wearing the clothes Zhou Heng had given her yesterday. When she walked out of the bedroom, a fragrant aroma drifted from the kitchen and into her nostrils, instantly waking her still slumbering stomach. She looked towards the kitchen and saw Zhou Heng, wearing an apron, cooking. She walked over, and just as she reached the kitchen doorway, Zhou Heng turned around, his eyes meeting hers. Gee, good morning. Yin Mingran greeted him in a small voice. Zhou Heng glanced at her, then nodded and replied softly, Yin Mingran looked at the dining table, where there was a lunchbox filled with the food Zhou Heng had just cooked. Only then did she remember that Zhou Heng brought his own lunch to school instead of eating at the cafeteria. It seemed he was the only one in the whole class who did. You're making lunch. Why do you bring your own? The school food is okay, right? Zhou Heng answered simply, I'm from an ethnic minority, and I have dietary restrictions. Really? No wonder. Looking at your face, you do kind of look like it. Yin Mingran was a little surprised. Then she studied Zhou Heng's face and found that his facial features did resemble those of an ethnic minority. The high nose bridge, the double eyelids. His features looked almost foreign. She had never noticed it before. I made breakfast. You can eat first. Zhou Heng pointed to the side, where steaming breakfast was laid out. By now, Yin Mingran's stomach had long been awakened by the aroma. Seeing the breakfast, it sent out signals of hunger. Yin Mingran replied softly, nodding, and sat down at the dining table. However, she didn't start eating right away. She waited for Zhou Heng. Only when he was finished and sitting at the table did she pick up her chopsticks. As they ate, Zhou Heng asked, Are you still going to school? Well, Yin Mingran thought about her school bag, which was still at school. The day she had left after the incident, she hadn't taken it, so it was still on her desk. She really should go back to school now. She couldn't just give up on herself after being left without anyone to care for her. But Yin Mingran glanced at her school uniform hanging up to dry. It wasn't completely dry yet. Plus, she wasn't in a good state, her eyes were still swollen, and she didn't have any other clothes to wear. I need to buy some clothes today. Maybe. I can go to school tomorrow. Oh, Zhou Heng nodded. He then took a key out of his pocket and tossed it onto the table in front of her. The house key. Come back after you're done shopping, or I won't be able to get in. Yin Mingran looked at the key, knowing that Zhou Heng was afraid she had nowhere to go and would secretly leave. She picked up the key and replied in a small voice, Oh, I know. She thought to herself, I can't stay at Zhou Heng's place forever, can I? He was kind enough to let her stay, but she couldn't just live here without any consideration. But the money she had wasn't enough to rent a place. Going to school was the main priority now. She couldn't just drop out and go to work. She was sure her parents' spirits wouldn't stand for it. So for now, apart from agreeing to Zhou Heng's offer and temporarily staying here, she really had no other choice. As for her good friend Tong Yining, she couldn't possibly trouble her and her parents. Zhou Heng's place, since he lived alone, was a more suitable option. After breakfast, Zhou Heng packed his things and left in a hurry. He didn't give Yin Mingran any instructions before he left. Yin Mingran looked at the empty house and couldn't help but sigh. This Zhou Heng is really trusting, letting me stay in his home alone. Yin Mingran decided to help Zhou Heng tidy up the house. Since she was staying here temporarily, she should at least do something. After cleaning, she would go out to buy clothes and maybe take a shower and freshen up. She first went to the bedroom to make the bed and open the windows for ventilation. Then she went to the living room to sweep and mop the floor. When she reached Zhou Heng's fitness area and saw the dumbbells, she felt a headache coming on. She had to move these things first to clean. So she rolled up her sleeves, walked over, grasped the dumbbell bar with both hands, and took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. Ugh. Min Gran moved the dumbbell aside, her face red from the effort. It's so heavy. How is Zhou Heng so strong? If only I'd known, I would have had him join the tug-of-war competition last year. As a class president, thinking about these things had become a habit, which was another reason she had to go back to school. Min Gran spent 20 minutes cleaning. As she was wiping a cabinet, her eyes caught something in a corner next to it. It was a cardboard box. Inside the box were many papers that looked like letters and some small boxes. She crouched down, took out one of the papers, and glanced at the contents. A look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Are these the love letters and gifts Zhou Heng wrote and bought for Tong Tong? The class president has been gone for so long. Is she okay? TSK, I don't know. I can't get in touch with Ran Ran either. I'm really worried about her, and I don't even know where she lives. Maybe we should ask the teacher? Ask if the teacher has her family's number. As Zhou Heng approached the school, he heard people talking just outside the classroom. The voices grew closer, and one of them was all too familiar. It was Tong Yining. Just as Zhou Heng was about to enter the classroom, Tong Yining and another girl were walking out. The three of them met at the doorway. Tong Yining had beautiful, dark hair and very delicate features, Zhou Heng's type. At least, that was true until yesterday. Oh ho! The other girl saw Zhou Heng and instinctively glanced at Tong Yining, her eyes wide with excitement. After all, the whole class knew about Zhou Heng and Tong Yining. Now that they'd met, Zhou Heng was 100% going to confess to Tong Yining again. As a front-row spectator, the chance to see Zhou Heng get heartlessly rejected was, of course, very exciting for her. When Tong Yining saw Zhou Heng, a flash of impatience crossed her face, and her delicate brows furrowed slightly. In her mind, she also expected Zhou Heng to confess. He followed her wherever she went, the kind you couldn't shake off. She thought to herself that if they hadn't been classmates for so many years, she would have lost her temper long ago. Anyway, it was the same thing every day, and she was used to it. Seeing Zhou Heng open his mouth to speak, Tong Yining spoke first, cutting him off. Zhou Heng already said, "Can you please not bother? Can you move aside?" Tong Yining's words were instantly shot back at her. Her mouth hung slightly open, her eyes widened, and it felt as if a bone was stuck in her throat, leaving her speechless. Tong Yining didn't react, but the girl next to her did, stepping aside. Zhou Heng walked straight past, leaving Tong Yining standing there, blinking dumbfounded. The other girl craned her neck, carefully looking at Tong Yining's profile. Tong Tong, are you okay? Huh? Me? What would be wrong with me? Seriously, it's a good thing you didn't bother me. Tong Yining snapped back to reality and quickly explained, but her eyes inadvertently glanced towards Zhou Heng inside the classroom. Her heart was beating a little fast, and her mind was filled with question marks. She didn't understand what was wrong with Zhou Heng. It seemed he wasn't quite his usual self. Zhou Heng walked to his seat and sat down. His desk mate, Tang Ji, was spinning a pen, looking very bored. When Zhou Heng sat down, she tossed him a piece of gum. Zhou Heng didn't say anything, just took it and opened it. The guild is rating tonight. You getting on? No, the monthly exams are coming up. I need to improve my rank by at least 50 spots this time. Zhou Heng sighed, then took out a workbook from his bag and prepared to do some problems. The raid tonight has that piece of gear you've always wanted. You sure you're not coming? Zhou Heng paused his pen, turned to look at Tang Ji, and sighed again. Tang Ji, I think you bear some responsibility for my poor grades. Tang Ji shrugged. But I've been playing with you too. But you're in the top 20 in the entire grade, and I'm ranked over 200. All right. I'll get the gear for you tonight. I'll give it to you when you get online later. Thanks. Just then, a boy walked over and lightly tapped Zhou Heng's shoulder. Zhou Heng turned around, looked at the boy, and frowned. Kong Yu, what is it? Zhou Heng, help me give this to Tang Ji, thanks. The boy handed Zhou Heng a love letter and then hurriedly fled. Zhou Heng turned and passed the letter to Tang Ji. For you. From Kong Yu. Tang Ji took it, didn't even look at it, and tossed it aside as if it were nothing. Aren't you going to read it? No, I'm not interested in dating. Tang Ji shook her head, her expression calm. Her words hit Zhou Heng like a heavy blow. After all, up until yesterday, he had been relentlessly pursuing someone, the complete opposite of Tang Ji's behavior. I really envy you. not being interested in this stuff at all. Yeah, it's not as fun as games. Zhou Heng thought to himself that if he had the same mindset as Tang Ji, he wouldn't have felt so dejected after so many failed confessions. Soon, class began. Zhou Heng listened quite attentively. He glanced over and saw the seat belonging to Yin Mingran. It had been empty for a long time, and the owner of that seat was currently staying at his home. She should be back at school tomorrow, right? Should I say something nice to her tonight, so she doesn't tell everyone I made her cry? His gaze shifted, and he noticed someone looking at him. If this had happened before, a glance from this person would have made him happy. But today, the feeling was completely different. The person was Tong Yining. She had been staring at him just as he was looking at Imingran's seat. After their eyes met, she turned her head away. After class, Zhou Heng was about to go to the restroom. As soon as he left the classroom, someone immediately followed him. Zhou Heng, bro, did you give that thing to Tang Ji? Kanyu came up beside Zhou Heng and asked in a low voice. Yeah, I gave it to her. What did she say? She said she's not interested, that games are more fun. Kanyu was stunned, standing there in a daze. After a moment, he hurried to catch up and continued to ask. And then? Was that all? Did you tell her it was from me? I did. The second I did, she tossed it aside. Damn. Kanyu's face was bitter, but he didn't want to give up. He continued, Bro, do you know what she likes? You must know. You've been her desk mate for 2 years. Tell me, I want to buy her a gift. Give up. Don't pursue her. Pick someone else. Kanyu said firmly. No, I like her just the way she is. Short hair, a lowly face, but also cool and sassy. To be honest, I even dreamed about her last night, but I can't tell you what the dream was about. You're sick. Then why are you asking me? Go ask someone else. Dude, you're her desk mate, and you have experience pursuing people, even though you've been at it for 2 years and still. Kanyu realized he'd misspoken and quickly shut his mouth, but Zhou Heng's sharp glare was already on him. He turned around, slapped Kanyu hard on the shoulder, making him wince in pain, though he didn't dare make a sound. Get her a 4090 graphics card for her computer. Use that as the standard for your gifts. During lunchtime, students could eat in the cafeteria or buy food and bring it back to the classroom. Zhou Heng had brought his own homemade lunch in an insulated container. If it got cold, he could ask the cafeteria staff to heat it up. Tang Ji, on the other hand, had bought her meal from the cafeteria and returned to the classroom to eat. Hey, bro, let's eat together. We can continue our conversation from this morning. Just then, Kanyu brought his lunch over to the seat in front of Zhou Heng, turned his chair around, and placed his lunch on Zhou Heng's desk. The conversation from this morning? Oh, you mean about Persa Games? We were talking about games this morning. Did you forget? Kanyu quickly interrupted Zhou Heng in a loud voice, glancing over at Tang Ji, who was paying them no mind. Tang Ji leaned over and looked at Zhou Heng's lunchbox, her eyes lighting up. She pointed with her chopsticks and said, I want that sunny-side-up egg. I knew you'd want it as soon as you saw it. I should have hidden it under the rice. Zhou Heng said with resignation as he used his chopsticks to give the egg to Tang Ji. After eating it, she nodded in satisfaction. Zhou Heng looked at the stunned Kanyu and said, All right, you can continue talking about games now. All right, games. What games do you guys play? Zhou Heng and Tang Ji exchanged a look. We play everything. Just then, Tang Ji looked at Zhou Heng and said, Did you watch last week's match? I knew that team would lose. They played so badly in those 2 games. Zhou Heng nodded and added, Honestly, their jungler is terrible. You could tell from those few ganks. He doesn't keep track of flashes at all, and his AoE ULT was garbage. The AD carry was mediocre too. His damage output was too low. I can't understand why he didn't use his BKB in that last team fight. Wait. Kanyu, seeing that he couldn't get a word in edgewise and had no idea what they were talking about, quickly stopped them. Otherwise, he'd just be sitting there like he was invisible. Kanyu asked in a small voice, Do you guys play any card games? Tang Ji nodded. Yeah. Then she looked at Zhou Heng again. Did you see the new OTK deck that just appeared on the ladder? I saw it. Honestly, I was a bit surprised. I didn't expect a combo like that. The opponent's kill threat is so fast. After Zhou Heng finished, he saw that Kanyu had wilted again. He looked at him and asked, So what card game do you play? Fight the landlord. That's a playing card game. Sorry. Kanyu lowered his head and focused on eating, not saying another word. His biggest mistake was trying to cater to her interests by talking about games. He had thought, what kind of games could a little girl possibly play? Casual puzzle games? Dating sims? Even if he hadn't played them, he could just agree with a few things. His mind was still stuck in the phase where girls played dress-up games. He never expected to come here only to be humiliated. It seemed he would have to go home and seriously practice his gaming. Tong tong? Tong tong. Tian run. What is it? Tong Yining came back to her senses and looked at the girl in front of her, still seeming a bit dazed. What's wrong with you? You seem distracted. Me? Distracted? No way. Tian Run pointed at Tong Yining's food. Tong Yining looked down and saw that she had, without realizing it, been mashing her rice grain by grain with her chopsticks, as if she was just playing with it. It's just that the monthly exams are coming up, and I'm a little stressed. No way. You're stressed about exams? Your grades are pretty good, aren't they? Even Ran, who's first in the class, worries about exams, let alone me. The class president is an exception. After all, she's maintained first place for 2 years. If she were to drop, she'd probably be very disappointed. I just don't know what will happen this time, or if she'll be able to come back to school before the exams. Yeah. Tong Yining nodded and continued to poke at her rice. She couldn't figure out what she was really thinking about. Was it really the exams? It didn't seem like it. Tian Run gently patted Tong Yining's arm and comforted her. All right, don't worry. Your grades are nothing to worry about. The person who really needs to worry is someone like Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng. Tong Yining's gaze instinctively drifted towards Zhou Heng's group. She saw him eating and chatting with Tang Ji and Kong Yu. In the past, if she looked his way, he would definitely be looking back at her, and their eyes would meet. But now, she had been staring at them for over 10 seconds, and Zhou Heng hadn't once looked in her direction. Something's not right. Very not right. Tong Yining's brow furrowed slightly as she muttered to herself, applying more pressure with her hand, crushing the rice grains flat. In the afternoon, during study hall, Zhou Heng was working on problems, occasionally scratching his head and frowning. He looked at the test paper in front of him, the dense text nearly putting him to sleep. Zhou Heng studying? This is so not right. When Tong Yining saw Zhou Heng seriously working on problems, she was bewildered. Study hall was usually his nap time. Why was he studying today? Had the sun risen from the west? The undeterred Kong Yu once again came over to Zhou Heng and Tang Ji's area with a test paper. Tang Ji, I don't get this problem. Can you teach me? Tang Ji looked up, glanced at Kong Yu, then looked back down. If you don't get it, go ask the teacher. Why are you asking me? Zhou Heng looked up and took the paper. I know this one. I'll show you how to do it. Yesterday, Ian. I just learned it yesterday. Before Zhou Heng could teach him, Kong Yu snatched the paper back and whispered in Zhou Heng's ear, Don't cause trouble. Do you know the saying, the drinker's heart is not in the wine? Zhou Heng, who had been eager to test his learning, instantly had his enthusiasm doused by Kong Yu. His brows furrowed tightly, and he said flatly, I only know that if you come over here again with nothing better to do, I'll kick you out, believe it or not. Kong Yu was about to say something when he saw Tang Ji shoot him a cold look from the side. He swallowed and quickly left. Although he claimed to like Tang Ji's attitude, facing it directly was still a bit intimidating. After Kong Yu left, Tang Ji whispered in Zhou Heng's ear, Tong Yining seems to be sneaking glances at you a lot today. Is it because you didn't confess today and she's not used to it? Hearing this, Zhou Heng didn't look up at Tong Yining, but continued with his work. I don't know. Let her. It's none of my business. Tong, school's over. Let's go. Tian Run came to Tong Yining's desk and saw that she had already packed her things, but wasn't in a hurry to leave. I'll be right there, Tong Yining answered vaguely, her peripheral vision darting elsewhere. Most of the students had already left the classroom. Zhou Heng was still packing his things. He used to be the fastest one out after school, but today, because he had been studying seriously, he had made a mess of his things, and it was taking him a long time to pack up. Finally, he finished. Zhou Heng stood up, ready to leave the classroom. At that exact moment, Tong Yining also stood up and started walking towards the door. If nothing unexpected happened, the two would meet at the classroom entrance. Damn, Zhou Heng, don't say I didn't give you a chance. Tong Yining observed Zhou Heng's speed. Seeing that she was a bit slow, she deliberately quickened her pace and managed to reach the doorway just before him. She turned her head, pretending to call for Tian Run to hurry up, but her eyes were secretly glancing at Zhou Heng. She knew this was his last chance for the day. He would definitely come up to her and confess, just like before. And to punish him for being so late today, Tong Yining decided she would reject him cruelly, even more mercilessly than usual. Zhou Heng was looking down at his phone and didn't even notice Tong Yining standing at the doorway. Just like that, he walked straight past her, without a single glance up, perfectly missing her. Tong Yining froze as if turned to stone, her eyes filled with disbelief, her mouth agape. She couldn't believe it. Had Zhou Heng not seen her? Was it intentional or an accident? Tong Yining stood at the door, watching Zhou Heng's retreating figure, not once looking back. Her mood instantly plummeted. She had kindly created an opportunity for him, and he didn't even take it? This made her look like an idiot. Excuse me. Just then, Tong Yining heard a voice behind her. She instinctively moved aside and looked back to see that it was Tang Ji, as Zhou Heng's desk mate. She didn't know this person well. Even after 2 years as classmates, they had barely spoken. She only knew that Tang Ji's grades were good and that she sometimes saw her leaving school with Zhou Heng. But Tong Yining had no idea where they went. Could Zhou Heng be with Tang Ji? An involuntary thought popped into Tong Yining's mind. But then she felt it didn't make sense. Zhou Heng had left right after school without waiting for Tang Ji. They didn't seem very close, did they? And they had been desk mates for over 2 years. If they were going to get together, it should have happened long ago. Why would he have spent so much time pursuing her? Tong, what are you doing? Let's go. Tian Run, who had already left the classroom, saw Tong Yining still standing there, lost in thought, as if she were sleepwalking. Tong Yining looked at Tian Run and asked, Arun, don't you think Zhou Heng was a bit strange today? No, I think you were the one who was a bit strange today. By now, Zhou Heng was already on his way home. On the way, he saw the step where he had found Yin Mingran yesterday. I should have gotten her number. What if she really left? That was my only key. But I think she said she didn't have her phone. Zhou Heng returned home, stood at his door, and knocked. Knock, knock. A moment later, he heard footsteps inside and let out a sigh of relief. Click, the door opened, and Zhou Heng saw that it was Yin Mingran who had opened it. She looked a little different from how she had this morning, more radiant. Her skin was fair and smooth. She was wearing new clothes, and her hair was smoother and tied up. The moment she saw Zhou Heng return, her eyes seemed to sparkle. You're back. Yeah, good thing you didn't leave, or I would have had to spend 200 yuan on a locksmith. Hearing Zhou Heng's words, Yin Mingran lowered her head and replied softly, I promised you. How could I leave? Zhou Heng entered the house, and, in the next second, noticed that Yin Mingran had cleaned up. It was even tidier than when he had left in the morning. A faint, pleasant scent filled the air. The clothes he had given her yesterday had been washed and were hanging up to dry. He had gone to school while Yin Mingran stayed home, cleaning and doing laundry like a housewife. By the way, do you really not have a phone? I'm worried I won't be able to contact you if something comes up, Zhou Heng said, putting down his bag and looking at Yin Mingran. Hearing this, Yin Mingran awkwardly turned her head away. A few days ago, I threw my phone in the river. Good for you. Zhou Heng helplessly put his phone back in his pocket. The person in front of him didn't seem like the caring, kind, gentle, and cheerful class president he remembered. She was more like a lost, crying child he had found while out for a walk. Zhou Heng stood up and went back into the bedroom. A moment later, he came out holding a phone. You can use this for now. It's my old phone. Still works. I'll give you my second SIM card later. At least then I can contact you. This. Yin Mingran took the phone, a surprised expression on her face. She looked at Zhou Heng with disbelief. It was an old phone, but he was just giving it to her? She was just his classmate. Not a relative, not a friend. Why was he helping her like this? Why are you treating me like this? Is it because of Tong? Yin Mingran asked in a small voice. In her mind, this was a very plausible reason. Was it because she was good friends with Tong Yining and Zhou Heng liked Tong Yining, so he wanted to get on her good side to get closer to Tong Yining? But hadn't he said yesterday that he wouldn't pursue Tong Yining anymore? Zhou Heng sat down in chair, looking at Yin Mingran with confusion. How am I treating you? I mean, why are you being so nice to me? Yin Mingran's voice grew smaller. She felt like this wasn't her at all. Why was she asking such a question so timidly? In the past, in class, she would have asked it in a joking tone, making it seem natural. But now it was exceptionally unnatural. Zhou Heng paused, silent for a few seconds, then shook his head. I don't think this is being nice to you. I think these are just things that should be done. Just like how you helped me clean the house. That's not you being nice to me. It's you doing what you feel you should. And no matter what I do, it definitely has nothing to do with Tong Yining. Zhou Heng started studying at his desk, quietly working on his problems, while Yin Mingran fiddled with the phone on the sofa. She opened the photo album and saw that there were pictures inside. Her first instinct was to exit, as it was Zhou Heng's privacy, and it wouldn't be good if she saw any private photos. But at first glance, all she saw were screenshots, not a single photo of a person. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she tapped on the screenshots. They were of chat logs. The person Zhou Heng was chatting with was also familiar to her. It was Tong Yining. Looking at the chat content, Yin Mingran was very surprised. Tong Yining had told her that her relationship with Zhou Heng wasn't good, that even though they were middle school classmates, they weren't close and had barely spoken. But based on these chat logs alone, although there was no ambiguous content, it was clear that their relationship had been very good, at least as good friends. In-min Gran knew it was wrong to read these logs, but the content made it difficult for her to stop. In the end, she understood the turning point of these screenshots. They practically documented how Zhou Heng and Tong Yining's relationship had changed. I'll say yes when I turn 18 next semester. Let's talk about it later. I'm really stressed with exams lately. I don't want to talk about this. Maybe next semester. Did I say that? Maybe in the third year of high school. Yeah, believe it or not. Tong Yining's attitude ended there. After that, Zhou Heng must have gotten a new phone. In-min Gran witnessed it firsthand. In the chat logs, Zhou Heng's messages went from many to fewer and fewer. By the end, after that last message from Tong Yining, Zhou Heng had simply replied with a Though they were just chat logs, In-min Gran could see the change in Zhou Heng's mindset, from full of hope to persistent effort to gradually becoming numb and finally to complete disappointment. In-min Gran understood the entanglement between them. From a first year of high school, when Zhou Heng started pursuing Tong Yining, he wasn't in his current state. Now he was concise, even annoying at times. From the chat logs, she could see he used to enjoy chatting, at least with Tong Yining. Although it was also clear his EQ wasn't high and he was a bit clumsy with words, at least he used to talk more. Then Tong Yining had promised him that she would accept his pursuit after she turned 18 in the second semester of their first year. But it seemed that didn't happen. Zhou Heng didn't give up and persisted. Later, Tong Yining's attitude worsened. Zhou Heng's messages became shorter, and they messaged each other less frequently. Then came their third year, the present, and Zhou Heng had practically become a different person. Seeing no results, he had finally decided not to walk down a dead-end road. In-min Gran took a deep breath. No wonder she hadn't understood before why Zhou Heng had persisted for so long, for 2 whole years. It turned out he had once seen hope, a hope given to him by Tong Yining herself, only for her to personally extinguish it. Zhou Heng had never told anyone about this, and no one else knew. In the end, the only one who became the class laughingstock was Zhou Heng. For a moment, she felt a sense of disdain for Tong Yining's behavior, and, at the same time, sympathy for Zhou Heng. In-min Gran looked up in Zhou Heng's direction and was startled. She saw him sitting there, pen in hand, one leg crossed over the other, silently watching her. She had been so engrossed in reading that she hadn't noticed him staring at her. Now she felt extremely awkward and also ashamed. Her curiosity had led her to pry into someone else's privacy. Zhou Heng turned his head and continued with his work, saying flatly, "If there's anything on the phone, just delete it all. There's nothing useful in there anymore." Hearing Zhou Heng say this, In-min Gran was stunned. She had thought these chat logs were quite important. Wouldn't it be a pity to delete them? But on second thought, it was true. To Zhou Heng, these things were useless now. Keeping them would only be a source of sadness and pain. It was better to delete them all and pretend nothing had happened. In-min Gran did as he said and deleted all the screenshots. Below the screenshots, there was another photo, which seemed to be their middle school graduation group photo. But Zhou Heng had cropped a small section of it, the part where Tong Yining was standing. In-min Gran deleted this photo as well. After all, Zhou Heng had said there was nothing useful left on the phone. After deleting everything, In-min Gran didn't want to look at the phone anymore. Instead, she wanted to study for a bit. She was going back to school tomorrow, and even though her grades had been good, she had fallen behind the others. Plus, her state of mind had been poor, her head a mess. It wouldn't be easy to get back into a study rhythm. Zhou Heng, can I borrow your notes? All her study materials were at school, so she had to borrow from him. Zhou Heng didn't hesitate. Without even looking up, he handed his notes to In-min Gran. In-min Gran sat down next to Zhou Heng, opened his notes, and started reading. The two of them sat at the desk, studying quietly. By now, it was around 11 at night. TSK. Zhou Heng started scratching his head again. When he encountered a problem, he didn't know. He just couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought. If this were a new game, he could probably master the gameplay in half an hour. But with a new problem, he could think for half a year and still not figure out. What's wrong? Is there something you don't understand? In-min Gran stood up and came over to Zhou Heng's side, looking at the paper in front of him. Yeah, Zhou Heng knew that in In-min Gran's eyes, this problem was extremely simple. So simple that she couldn't understand why he didn't get it, or what part he didn't get. But a dummy like him just didn't get it. In-min Gran pointed at the problem on the paper and said, "Okay, I'll teach you. Look, since y equals fx is monotonically increasing on -2, 1, then fx equals 3x superscript 2 plus 2x plus b greater than or equal to 0 must hold true on -2. Wait, what are you saying? Is that weeb speak? In Min Gran froze for a moment, then let out a soft of laughter. Don't mess around. I'm trying to teach you. Can you be a little more serious? I swear I'm being serious. What are you saying? I don't understand a single word. Finally, with Imungran's patient guidance, Zhou Heng learned how to do the problem. The moment he wrote down the correct answer, he slumped limply in his chair, a look of utter despair on his face. He felt like his brain was a clogged toilet, stuffed to the brim. He couldn't possibly learn anything else today. He just felt that math was a truly terrifying thing. In a game, it would be at least a T0 level boss, the kind where it feels normal to lose, but if you win, you feel like a total badass. Seeing Zhou Heng's exhausted state, In Min Gran covered her mouth and couldn't stop giggling. Zhou Heng glanced at her, but didn't say anything. He just felt that his hopes of improving his rank in the upcoming exam were slim, and it had become his biggest problem. Just then, besides Imungran's laughter, there was a sudden rumbling sound. Imungran's laughter stopped abruptly, frozen on her face. That rumbling sound was her stomach growling. Zhou Heng looked at Imungran with confusion. Did you have dinner? A faint blush appeared on Imungran's cheeks. She stammered, well, no. In reality, she hadn't eaten all day, except for the breakfast Zhou Heng had made. In between, she had gone out to buy things and take a shower, which had drained her energy. By the time she realized she should eat, it was almost time for school to let out. Worried that eating out would take too long, she had decided to skip it. Now, in the middle of the night, her stomach was starting to protest. Zhou Heng let out a heavy sigh through his nose, then stood up and walked towards the kitchen. Wait here! Seeing that Zhou Heng was going to cook for her, Imingran quickly waved her hands and tried to persuade him. No. You don't have to bother. I don't need to eat. It's too late. Let's just forget it. I can't let you go hungry here, was his only reply before he stepped into the kitchen and closed the door. She had already experienced Zhou Heng's stubbornness yesterday, so she knew that no amount of persuasion would work. She sat where she was, her head slightly bowed, staring at the table and pursing her lips, her mind a blank. But no matter what she thought, the hunger in her stomach was impossible to ignore. After a while, the sizzling sound of food hitting a pan came from the kitchen, followed by a fragrant aroma. She had eaten a bowl of noodles he made yesterday and the breakfast he made this morning. Although they were simple meals, she could tell they were delicious. She could feel that Zhou Heng was a very good cook. 10 minutes later, the kitchen light went out. Zhou Heng came out holding a plate of steaming hot fried rice. Here, eat. He pushed the plate in front of Min Gran and said softly. Min Gran didn't refuse any further. Having not eaten all day, she couldn't control herself at the sight of the fragrant fried rice. Thank you. After a quiet word of thanks, Min Gran began to eat. She ate in small bites, and even though she was starving, she didn't wolf it down. However, she ate one mouthful after another without stopping until the entire plate was empty. After she finished, Min Gran quickly stood up and went to the kitchen to wash the plate. She realized that Zhou Heng's cooking was truly delicious. It would be a wonderful thing to be able to eat it every day, or maybe even bring his packed lunches to school. Min Gran snapped out of it and quickly pushed the thought away. She was only staying here temporarily. Once she was stable, she would definitely have to leave. She couldn't possibly live here forever. When she left, she planned to pay Zhou Heng rent. She couldn't just live here for free, eating his food and using his things. That wasn't her style. After leaving the kitchen, Min Gran looked ahead and froze. She saw Zhou Heng standing by the cabinet, staring intently at the cardboard box next to it. It was the box of love letters and gifts he had bought for Tong Yining, the one she had seen this morning. Although she hadn't looked through all of them, she hadn't put it back exactly as it was. It seemed she had just left it there after looking. Sure enough, when Zhou Heng saw Min Gran, he asked, "Did you see it?" Min Gran shivered, feeling as if she knew too much and was about to be silenced. No. Well, okay, I saw it, but I didn't open and read every single one. I only saw one letter. Zhou Heng picked up one, glanced at it, and tossed it back into the box, muttering, "It doesn't matter if you saw it. It's all extremely ridiculous anyway. Perfect for a laugh. I'm planning to throw all this out tomorrow morning." You. Are you really going to throw it away? Is there anything more worthless than returned love letters and gifts? It's just a pile of trash. Zhou Heng looked at the box of love letters, his eyes growing deep, his gaze filled with disappointment. Min Gran saw this clearly, and her heart filled with even more sympathy for him. She knew that, in his heart, Zhou Heng must have imagined what it would be like to be with Tong Yining. But that was, in the end, an unfulfilled fantasy. Zhou Heng took a roll of tape, sealed the box, and placed it by the door with the other trash to be thrown out in the morning. Then he turned around, his expression changed, the disappointed look completely gone. He went to the bathroom to wash up. Even Yin Mingran was a little surprised at how quickly his mood had shifted. But on second thought, perhaps it was because he had endured so much that he could let go so easily now. In the past 2 years, he had probably struggled with this countless times in his heart, so now he no longer dwelled on it. Soon, it was midnight. It was time for the part of the night that worried Yin Mingran the most, sleeping. Turning off the light. Click. The room went dark, and they lay in bed, separated by the blanket divider. It's like this again. Yin Mingran was wrapped tightly in her blanket, with only her head sticking out, like a baby in swaddling clothes. They hadn't discussed who would sleep in the bedroom and who would take the sofa today. They just followed yesterday's method, and both slept in the bed. This was the second time she was sleeping in the same bed as a male classmate. If anyone else found out, if her classmates found out, how would she explain it? Even with 10 mouths, she probably couldn't explain it clearly. Just then, a different voice emerged in Imingran's mind. But, do I really still care about being misunderstood? My family went through a major tragedy. I even thought about dying back then, wandering outside in my school uniform, walking and crying, completely ignoring the gazes and whispers of others. I have to admit, if it weren't for Zhou Heng, I don't know where I'd be right now. I wouldn't have had the heart to go to school tomorrow. You could say that Zhou Heng saved me. Compared to that, how much does a small thing like this matter? Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng heard Yin Mingran call his name and responded softly. The next second, he heard Yin Mingran's soft, faint voice, "Good night." Yin Mingran slept much more soundly this time than she had the night before. Perhaps it was because she was getting used to it, or perhaps it was because she had come to terms with her situation and felt at ease. After all, she had already endured the greatest blow imaginable. She felt that nothing could knock her down anymore. When Yin Mingran opened her eyes, she found it was already daytime. Just like yesterday, she was the only one in bed. Then she heard the sound of cooking coming from the kitchen. This was something she particularly admired, even worshipped, in Zhou Heng. They were both high school students, but she estimated that the vast majority of people couldn't match Zhou Heng's self-control. Waking up whenever he decided to, insisting on making breakfast every day, and even exercising. Now, he had started studying independently, too. His potential for growth was immense. In short, aside from being a bit weak in the areas of romance and communication, he was practically impeccable in every other aspect. This was probably why his parents felt at ease letting him live alone. There was simply nothing to worry about. Yin Mingran sat up, tied up her hair, and started folding the quilt. By the time she walked out of the bedroom, Zhou Heng had already prepared lunch. However, she noticed that today was a little different from yesterday. On the table, there seemed to be 2 lunchboxes. Hearing Yin Mingran come out of the bedroom, Zhou Heng glanced up and then continued fiddling with the lunchboxes. He put the lids on both, then pushed the smaller one in front of Yin Mingran. "This is..." Yin Mingran looked at the lunchbox before her, blinking her eyes in astonishment. "I prepared it for you. It was no trouble. Won't this save you some money on meals? If you don't want it, I won't make it tomorrow." "No, I want it." Yin Mingran quickly cupped her hands over her lunchbox, as if afraid Zhou Heng would snatch it back. All right, there's also fruit and yogurt." With a casual toss, Zhou Heng sent a small food container flying over. Inside was cut fruit, along with a pouch of yogurt. Wow. Yin Mingran's eyes lit up as she looked at the lunchbox, fruit, and yogurt before her. It was as if she had been transported back to her childhood, to her first-grade self. Back then, her mother would also prepare snacks, fruit, and so on for her. And now, that feeling she thought she could never get back, she had surprisingly found it in a male classmate. The look in Yin Mingran's eyes, as she gazed at Zhou Heng, was filled with a particularly obvious happiness of satisfaction. Seeing Yin Mingran's reaction, Zhou Heng became even more certain of his theory. He had suspected yesterday that Yin Mingran might still be a child at heart, completely different from how she was at school. That's why he had specially prepared these things for her today. Judging by the results, the conclusion was that there was no difference between Yin Mingran and a child. Yin Mingran smacked her lips, looked at Zhou Heng, and said, "I really don't understand why Tong Tong won't say yes to you. It would obviously be great to be with you." Zhou Heng let out a soft huff, muttering nonchalantly, "I really wish she could hear you say that." He was just muttering to himself, but Yin Mingran took it seriously. She stared at Zhou Heng for a few seconds and asked, "Do you want me to help you? After we get to school today, I can help set you two up. I feel like you might just be missing a mediator. Forget it. I already said, I won't have anything to do with her anymore. If you spout nonsense, you'll end up just like her. Then pretend I didn't say anything. In Min Gran quickly shut her mouth. Seeing that Zhou Heng was serious, she didn't dare bring it up again. The two of them washed up, ate breakfast, packed their things, and then left for school together. In Min Gran was a bit nervous. She hadn't been to school for a long time and felt a little awkward. When she got to school, her classmates would surely surround her and ask questions, pressing her about why she hadn't come, what had happened. She really didn't want to talk about these things. Once they were out the door, Zhou Heng threw away the cardboard box full of his sad memories without any hesitation, not even giving it a final glance. It seemed he didn't care about it at all, as useless as kitchen waste. In Min Gran straightened her clothes and asked Zhou Heng, "Do you think I've changed at all compared to how I was at school more than 10 days ago?" In Min Gran wanted to be the same as before, not wanting her classmates to sense any change in her. Yesterday, she had applied a cold compress for a long time to reduce the swelling in her eyes from crying. Otherwise, they would still look puffy today. Even so, she was still afraid Tong Yining and the others would notice and ask questions, which would eventually lead to them asking where she was living now. If she said she was living alone, what if they wanted to come over at night? She couldn't bring Zhou Heng any surprises, could she? Zhou Heng glanced at In Min Gran, looking her up and down for a long time without speaking. "What's wrong?" In Min Gran asked, puzzled. "Actually, I don't have much of an impression of what you were like at school, so I can't tell what's different." "Fine." In Min Gran turned her head away in resignation, regretting asking Zhou Heng this question. But she didn't dare criticize him, since she hadn't had a deep impression of him at school before either. The two of them were the kind of classmates who rarely interacted. They might not exchange more than a few words in an entire semester. On the way, the two also maintained a certain distance, so it wasn't obvious they were going to school together. At the school gate, In Min Gran took a deep breath to calm herself. She had even mentally rehearsed how she would face her classmates. "Hey, class president." Just then, she heard a voice. Turning around, she saw several classmates behind her. In Min Gran raised her hand and said softly, "Ah, long time no see. It really is the class president. She came to school. We missed you so much. Why did you suddenly stop coming? We were so worried." Several people quickly walked up and surrounded In Min Gran, completely ignoring Zhou Heng, who was right beside her. And Zhou Heng didn't mind either, walking straight ahead. In Min Gran dealt with the classmates around her. People were chattering all at once, and she didn't know what to do. But seeing her classmates were still so enthusiastic towards her, she wasn't as worried anymore. Just then, In Min Gran saw a girl approach Zhou Heng, who was walking ahead. "Here." Zhou Heng caught the piece of gum tang Ji threw to him with one hand and popped it in his mouth, asking softly, "How'd it go?" Got it. A high-grade one. Nice. I'll trade you for it later. I'll treat you to some internet cafe time another day." The two walked very close. In Min Gran saw it all. Even she and Zhou Heng didn't walk that close. They still maintained a distance. Their conversation was also quite natural. It was the first time she had seen Zhou Heng chat so smoothly, sentence by sentence. It was as if In Min Gran couldn't hear what the people around her were saying. Her eyes were fixed on the two people ahead. "Is that Zhou Heng's deskmate, Tang Ji?" Ran, you're finally here. I was so worried about you. What on earth happened?" The moment Tong Yining saw In Min Gran, she immediately ran over and gave her a hug, looking as if she had found a long-lost relative. I had some family matters, so I couldn't come," In Min Gran replied, but her gaze drifted towards Zhou Heng and the others. Most of the class had gathered around In Min Gran, with only Zhou Heng and his group sitting in their own seats. In Min Gran saw Zhou Heng and Tang Ji chatting incessantly about something. Where did they find so much to talk about? She lived in Zhou Heng's house, and he didn't even talk that much to her. "Class president, the teacher wants to see you in the office." "Okay." In Min Gran stood up, preparing to go to the teacher's office. Before leaving, her eyes were fixed on Zhou Heng's direction, but she didn't see him glance at her even once. After walking out, In Min Gran felt a strange mood creeping in. It was perfectly normal for Zhou Heng to chat with his deskmate. Why did she feel so unbalanced? Was it just because Zhou Heng hadn't said that much to her? But that was normal too. She and Zhou Heng weren't close before. In Min Gran's mind was racing with wild thoughts, and she didn't see the person in front of her. Bang! In Min Gran bumped into the person, quickly taking a step back and saying, "I'm sorry. In Min Gran, you're back at school." In Min Gran looked up and saw the boy in front of her, his face lit with a pleasant surprise. "Lu Yunxia." "Yeah, these past few days, I had some family matters. The boy in front of her was tall, the class's sports committee member. In the first few days after she left school, he seemed to have frequently sent her messages asking how she was, though she hadn't replied to any of them, right up until she threw her phone into the river. Are you okay? You don't seem to be in a good state. Liu Yinchua lowered his head, moving closer to Yin Mingran's face as if trying to read something from it. Yin Mingran took a step back, quickly moved around him, and said, "The teacher called me to the office, bye." Then she fled in a hurry. Liu Yinchua looked back at Yin Mingran's departing figure, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly in a smile. What could they be talking about? Would Zhou Heng tell Tang Ji about me staying at his house? I didn't know much about Tang Ji before. She seemed pretty quiet and didn't respond very enthusiastically when you talked to her. Is it because their personalities are similar, so they have things to talk about? Tang Ji's grades are really good. If Zhou Heng has a problem he can't solve, he'd ask her, right? Yin Mingran. Called out. Yin Mingran suddenly snapped back to reality, realizing she was still in front of the teacher. What had she been thinking about just now? How did her thoughts drift so far? The teacher held Yin Mingran's hand and said in a soft, gentle voice, "Are you all right? I can understand how you're feeling right now. If it's especially hard, just tell me. If you have any difficulties, just say so. You will definitely get through this. If any classmates say anything hurtful, you come tell me, and I'll deal with them." Okay, thank you, teacher. Yin Mingran also knew she had to look forward. In the past 10-odd days, she had been sorrowful to the extreme, thinking about everything she could. But the facts were the facts. No matter how sad she was, she couldn't change anything. After returning to the classroom, her classmates started to shower her with concern, which was enough to show how popular she usually was in class. Zhou Heng glanced at the crowd forming around Yin Mingran. He wasn't surprised at all. He had already guessed this would happen. Luckily, Yin Mingran's seat was far from his, so his area was quieter. If a group of people were crowded over here, he'd be driven crazy by the noise. Suddenly, someone ran over to Zhou Heng's side. He sighed helplessly. It seemed the only person who had come here to cause a commotion had arrived. Kong Yu was holding a bag, which he handed to Tang Ji. Tang Ji, I bought this for you." Zhou Heng glanced over and saw it was a bag of candy. He guessed Kong Yu probably bought it, because he saw Tang Ji often eating candy. Tang Ji didn't even look at it, shaking her head and saying, "Thank you, I don't want it." I already bought it, just take it. If you really don't want it, you could just throw it away." Kong Yu placed the bag on Tang Ji's desk and then turned to go back to his seat. Tang Ji also sighed, looking at the bag of candy with helplessness in her eyes. "I need an insulin drip to finish this, right?" Ahem, congratulations in advance on getting diabetes. Zhou Heng just made a mocking comment, and a large pile of candy appeared on his desk. Tang Ji shrugged and said, "Congratulations to you too. How long will it take to metabolize all this after eating it? I don't want it. Why don't you listen to him and just throw it away?" Zhou Heng shook his head, rejecting her, and put all the candy back. He hadn't had time to exercise recently because of various things. Eating so much sugar would be the death of him. "Sigh, forget it. I'll just eat it slowly." Tang Ji put all the candy into the bag and placed it on the floor. You accepted it once, which gave him hope. He'll give you things countless times after this. Will you accept or not? If you don't, he'll keep pestering you. If you do, and you don't say yes to him later, he'll condemn you for accepting gifts without agreeing to be with him. Tang Ji's face was full of exasperation. She covered her face and muttered, "This is why I hate dating. It's so troublesome." Then, she picked up the bag of candy, handed it to Zhou Heng, and said, "Please help me return it to him. When it's done, I'll reward you handsomely." "None of my business. Return it yourself. I'll give you that rare mount that dropped from the boss." "Hand it over." Zhou Heng snatched the bag of candy, stood up, and went to Kong Yu's seat. Kong Yu was still feeling smug when the next second the bag he had given away was thrown back at him. "Dude, take it back. She doesn't want it," Zhou Heng said coolly, looking down at Kong Yu. Kong Yu was slightly taken aback. He turned to look at Zhou Heng, his brow furrowed. He stood up, staring straight ahead, then cocked his head with his hands on his hips. "What's it got to do with you?" "Nothing. I'm just returning it on her behalf. Why are you so meddlesome? Don't tell me you like Tang Ji." Kong Yu deliberately raised his voice on the last sentence. In an instant, the entire classroom fell silent. Even the noisy area around Yin Mingran quieted down, everyone turning to look at Zhou Heng's side. Yin Mingran and Tong Yining's eyes widened almost simultaneously, their faces filled with disbelief. Zhou Heng still showed no expression. He closed his eyes, exhaled, then reached out, took a few pieces of candy from the bag, unwrapped them, and the next second, stuffed them all into Kong Yu's mouth. MMPH. Kong Yu, his mouth stuffed with candy, sat down hard on his chair. Zhou Heng didn't say a word and walked back to his seat. The classroom was silent, everyone looking towards Zhou Heng and Tang Ji. But the two of them seemed completely unconcerned, carrying on with their business as if unaffected. Kong Yu spat out the candy and was just getting up to walk over when the teacher for the next class walked in. All right, back to your seats. Class is starting. Kong Yu took a deep breath, shot a vicious glare at Zhou Heng, and returned to his seat. In his heart, he had now classified Zhou Heng as a love rival. The more he thought about it, the more it felt wrong. Why would deskmates be so close? He never expected this Zhou Heng to be confessing to Tong Yining on the surface while secretly liking Tang Ji. He was simply inhuman. During class, Kong Yu kept staring at Zhou Heng, his eyes fierce, grinding his teeth in anger. He had wanted to embarrass Zhou Heng in front of the whole class, but why did it seem like he didn't care at all? Instead, it was he who ended up embarrassed. It wasn't just Kong Yu watching Zhou Heng. Min Gran couldn't concentrate in class either, her mind replaying what had just happened. They'd been walking quite close in the morning too. Could there really be something going on? Had Zhou Heng stopped liking Tong Yining because he had fallen for Tang Ji? Min Gran unconsciously looked towards Zhou Heng's side, only to see another person also sneaking glances over there. Tong? She's secretly watching Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng was focused on the lesson. He knew he had to study or he'd fail. He was genuinely clueless about everything. If his ranking didn't go up, his living allowance would be deducted, and then he wouldn't be able to afford to spend money on new game events. You're quite popular. A lot of people are secretly looking at you, Tang Ji said softly, leaning close to Zhou Heng's ear. Zhou Heng shot her a look and said irritably, "Isn't this all thanks to you? How can you have the nerve to gloat? Later I'll report to the imperial court and have you in theft as the shield general. Then I'd rather commit suicide and ascend to heaven. Seriously though, my mom asked yesterday when you're coming over. She wants to cook you something good, some other day." After class, Kong Yu immediately got up from his seat and went over to Zhou Heng's side. He was determined to get justice for himself. He couldn't just swallow this. Kong Yu came up to Zhou Heng, patted his shoulder, and said coldly, "Hey, come outside." Almost everyone in the class was watching them. After all, who would want to miss out on some drama? Zhou Heng didn't even look up, replying no. "Hiss, didn't you hear me?" Kong Yu reached out and grabbed Zhou Heng's shirt. Min Gran immediately stood up and intervened. "Don't fight." As the class president, she certainly had to manage such situations, especially when it involved Zhou Heng, her benefactor. After Min Gran spoke, someone else moved. It was Lu Yunxuo. He immediately came between the two, pulling Kong Yu's hand away. "Hey, let go. Lu Yunxuo, step aside. This has nothing to do with you." Kong Yu tried to push Lu Yunxuo away, but Lu Yunxuo was tall and strong. Kong Yu was much shorter and not as strong. "No fighting, or I'll tell the teacher." Min Gran also came over, warning Kong Yu. Throughout the whole ordeal, Zhou Heng hadn't paid him any attention, and even Tang Ji hadn't looked up. This made Kong Yu extremely awkward, like punching a cotton ball with all his might. Lu Yunxuo then spoke up, "If you're really not convinced, then have a civilized PK. Arm wrestling. You can have a competitive spirit, but no fighting." Arm wrestling? Kong Yu's eyebrows shot up. He hesitated for a moment, looking at Zhou Heng's arm. Although he couldn't see much through the clothes, he felt that he should be no match for him. He at least exercised regularly. Would he really lose to someone like Zhou Heng, who just played games all the time? Besides, if he got into a fight, Tang Ji might dislike him for it. But with arm wrestling, he would gain face if he won and wouldn't be disliked. "I'm fine with whatever." "Hey, do you dare?" Kong Yu looked at Zhou Heng. After all, Zhou Heng hadn't said a word from the beginning, and he didn't know what he was planning. Zhou Heng's chest rose and fell. He turned to look at Kong Yu and said coolly, "Arm wrestling or fighting, you decide whatever will make you stop bothering me for good." "Hey, what the hell?" A surge of anger rushed through Kong Yu. Zhou Heng's words clearly showed he didn't think much of him. "Fine, come on, let's arm wrestle. If I lose, I'll never bother you again, deal?" "Hey, while you're at it, don't bother me either." Tang Ji suddenly looked up and said to Kong Yu. Kong Yu was truly stunned, the corner of his mouth twitching, his face looking ugly. For her to say that in front of everyone was like a harsh slap to his face. Kong Yu gritted his teeth and nodded in agreement. Fine. If I lose, I won't bother you two anymore. But what if I win?" "If you win, you win. You're the one who started this mess. What else do you want? Aren't you dreaming big?" Zhou Heng snorted coldly and rolled his eyes at him. This remark caused the onlookers to burst into laughter, making Kong Yu's face turn green as if he'd been poisoned, trembling with anger, his scalp tingling. Kong Yu sat down in front of Zhou Heng and extended his hand, ready to compete. The whole class gathered around to watch, and some even started betting on who would win. Yin Mingran was also watching from the side. She felt Zhou Heng shouldn't lose. After all, he was so strong. Zhou Heng looked at Kong Yu and said, "You can use 2 hands." Huh? Kong Yu's brow furrowed into a tight knot. He wasn't very familiar with Zhou Heng before, but today he had finally seen it all. How could this person be so full of himself? Letting him use 2 hands? Was he planning to make it so that even if he won, it wouldn't be glorious? All right, cut the crap. Class is starting soon. Just the right hand. Let's get this over with, Kong Yu said impatiently, extending his right hand. Zhou Heng also extended his right hand. Their hands clasped together, and Lu Yunshua acted as the referee in the middle. Seeing they were ready, he announced, "Ready, go." From the start, Kong Yu gritted his teeth and used all his strength, planning for a quick victory. Zhou Heng, however, seemed quite relaxed. You couldn't even see any strain on his face. After a few seconds, Kong Yu's face quickly turned red, but his arm didn't move an inch. He began to realize something was wrong. "No way. Damn. You bastard." Kong Yu used every ounce of his strength, but the arm remained motionless. His heart pounded wildly, his face so red it looked like it was about to bleed. He felt Zhou Heng start to exert force, and he had no strength to resist at all. His own arm was slowly moving downwards. In reality, Zhou Heng could have slammed it down directly, but he was worried that doing it too quickly might break Kong Yu's arm, so he didn't use too much force. Kong Yu's eyes widened, seeing that he was about to lose in front of everyone. As the one who had started the trouble, he was about to lose all face. The next second, as if by reflex, he brought out his other hand, using both hands to wrestle. The onlookers showed expressions of contempt. Wasn't this behavior just cheating like a sore loser? Zhou Heng, however, didn't care. Since he was using 2 hands, he probably wasn't that fragile. So, he began to apply force. Slap! In just an instant, the contest was over. Zhou Heng won decisively. Zhou Heng wins. I really don't know what to say. You're on your own. Lu Yunshua patted Kong Yu's shoulder and shook his head, clearly showing his disdain for his recent behavior. The surrounding crowd also booed and hissed, then dispersed. Kong Yu remained in place, dazed as if he were a fool, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly agape, looking like he would drool even after recovering. He never thought he would lose, and what's more, lose even after cheating with 2 hands. He had lost completely, both in the contest and in character. Bye-bye. Go home and eat more candy. Zhou Heng waved his hand, signaling for Kong Yu to leave. Kong Yu glanced up at Tang Ji and saw that she hadn't looked up, not surprised at all, as if she had known the outcome of the match in advance. His heart died completely. He stood up and walked back to his seat in a daze. Zhou Heng flexed his wrist. Just then, Tang Ji handed him a wet wipe. "Here, wipe your hand." This farce ended just like that. The class's attention shifted. Originally, they were discussing Zhou Heng and Tang Ji, but now it all turned to discussing Kong Yu, saying things like they always knew Kong Yu was no good, had bad character, loved to cause trouble, and so on. It was a classic case of kicking someone when they're down. In the hallway, Yin Mingran, Tong Yining, and Tian Run went to the restroom. Tian Run spoke with some surprise. "I never knew Zhou Heng was so strong. I never see him exercise." He's dumb, so he has some brute strength," Tong Yining said dismissively, though her mind was still on the morning's events. Yesterday, she had suspected Zhou Heng and Tang Ji were together, and today she was even more suspicious, even feeling that her suspicions were correct. At this moment, she desperately wanted to know what was going on. Why hadn't Zhou Heng confessed to her yesterday as usual, and was he really with Tang Ji or not? But she couldn't ask, as that would make it seem like she cared about him. "He seems a bit dull." "Hey, Ran, what do you think of Zhou Heng? Do you think he's a good match for Tong Tong?" Tian Run asked Yin Mingran with a mischievous smile. Hearing this, Tong Yining pretended to be angry and lightly tapped Tian Run. "Hey, what nonsense are you talking? Seriously, don't you know how much he annoys me?" She thought Yin Mingran wouldn't answer, but she nodded seriously and replied, I think he's indeed a bit dull, but he's a very good person. Probably. As for whether he's a good match for Tong Tong." Yin Mingran suddenly thought of the chat log she saw last night, shook her head, and said, "I don't think they're a good match." Tong Yining spread her hands and said to Tian Run, "See, I told you we're not a good match." Yin Mingran added silently in her heart, Sorry, Tong Tong, I don't think you're worthy of the feelings he's invested." Tian Run nodded helplessly and said, Yes, not a good match. You need to be with a handsome guy like Lu Yunshua, right?" "Lu Yunshua? Stop joking. Who doesn't know he likes Ran? He's definitely Ranran's, right? Tong Yining smirked meaningfully, nudging Yin Min Gran with her arm, just like Tian Run had done moments before. Hearing this, Yin Min Gran slowly shook her head. No, I don't like him. Both Tong Yining and Tian Run were a bit surprised and asked in astonishment. Huh? Why? He's tall and handsome. His grades are good. What's wrong with him? There's nothing wrong with him. It's just, he's not my type. Then what's your type? Yin Min Gran paused, thought for a moment, and her thin lips parted as she said softly, just, straightforward, has his own opinions, caring, self-disciplined, and a bit manly. Huh? Who? Is there a guy like that in our class? Tian Run and Tong Yining looked at each other, searching their minds for the characteristics of the boys in their class to see if any matched. But from the surface, it seemed there was no one like that. I'm just saying I like that type. I didn't say who. A flash of panic crossed Imungran's eyes, and she quickly explained. Come on, can't you have some ambition? What kind of type is that? You, with your great qualities, you can totally have higher standards. Hearing their words, Imungran's eyes drooped, a hint of sadness flashing in them. Qualities? Right now, mine are probably terrible, she muttered to herself, a sense of sorrow rising in her heart. All she could do now was study hard and try to improve her situation. But there was one aspect of her situation that could never be fixed. Who would be willing to marry her in the future? A girl with no family, no one to dote on her? Even if she got married, without family to back her up, she would surely be bullied. She had already prepared herself to be alone for the rest of her life. The morning passed quickly, and it was soon lunchtime. Yin Min Gran had been looking forward to lunch since the morning. After all, it was handmade by Zhou Hong. She took the lunchbox out of her desk, placed it on the table, and opened it. A full spread of delicious food was presented before her. Her eyes lit up. Just looking at it was enough to whet her appetite. Hey, Ran, why did you bring a packed lunch today? Tong Yining asked with some surprise upon seeing the lunchbox on Imungran's desk. I just suddenly felt like it. Let me have a bite. Did your mom make it? Tong Yining asked with a smile, looking at Imungran's food. No, I made it myself. Really? Let me try. Tong Yining picked up her chopsticks, took a small bite, and slowly chewed. After a moment, her chewing slowed, and her fine brows furrowed slightly. You made this yourself? Yes, what's wrong? Nothing. The flavor just seems a bit familiar. But it's very delicious. You're amazing. It's all right. Yin Min Gran felt a little flustered inside. She hadn't expected Tong Yining to find the flavor familiar. Could she have eaten Zhou Heng's cooking before? They used to have a good relationship, so she probably had. It was a good thing she didn't figure out that this was made by Zhou Hong. Tong Yining returned to her seat and slowly swallowed the food in her mouth. Her throat moved, and then she turned her head to glance at Zhou Hong, seeing that he was also eating. She couldn't help but frown, seemingly pondering something. Strange. Yin Min Gran ate every last bite, went to wash her lunchbox, and came back to finish the fruit and drink the yogurt. Finally, she lay on the desk with a satisfied heart. A faint smile played on her lips. For some reason, she felt as if she had returned to her childhood. When she was in elementary school, she also brought her own lunch. Back then, it was her mother who prepared her lunch every morning. Tears welled up in Imungran's eyes, then slid down her face, dripping onto the desk. She quickly sat up and wiped away the tears to prevent others from seeing. The summer afternoons were rather stuffy, and the students in the classroom were all drowsy, on the verge of falling asleep. In the afternoon, they had a gym class. Gym classes were very rare now, with only one per week. Most other classes had already stopped having them. But Zhou Heng's class was number one in the grade, with many students ranking at the top. So, their homeroom teacher didn't cancel this gym class, allowing them to go down for free activity to stretch their legs, which made students from other classes very envious. Everyone went downstairs to the playground and started to play wildly. The boys took a basketball and went to the basketball court. For them, this was probably the happiest time of the day. Zhou Hong, however, sat in a shady spot, reading a book. He also wanted to get some fresh air outside, but he also wanted to squeeze in time to study. After all, his grades were too poor, and he had to work harder than others to catch up. Hey, look, Zhou Heng is reading over there. It doesn't look like he's just putting on an act. He's really started studying seriously. Tian Run pointed at Zhou Hong in the shade and said to Tong Yining and Yin Min Gran beside her. She had felt that Zhou Hong was a bit different yesterday, as if he had undergone some change, and today she saw him studying hard. Yin Min Gran nodded gently. Only she knew how hard Zhou Hong was working. He studied diligently at home as well, showing his determination. Tong Yining, however, seemed uninterested. She pulled Min Gran and Tian Run, saying, "Hey, let's go watch the boys play basketball." Min Gran was reluctantly dragged away by Tong Yining. Compared to watching those boys play basketball, she actually wanted to go read with Zhou Heng. But that would be a bit too deliberate and would surely lead to gossip. She didn't mind for herself, but she was mainly afraid of affecting Zhou Heng. The three of them went to the basketball court and watched the boys play. Although Min Gran didn't really want to watch. With girls watching, the person most affected was Lu Yunchun. The moment his eyes caught Min Gran by the court, his body seemed to be pumped with adrenaline. He became particularly active, constantly yelling for others to pass him the ball, and even tried to show off with a dunk, which unfortunately failed. But he didn't seem to see this failure as his own fault and started complaining that others didn't pass well. The basketball court was buzzing with enthusiasm, while Zhou Heng's side was peaceful and quiet. Just as he was turning to the next page of his book, a basketball was suddenly thrown into his lap, almost hitting him in the nose. Zhou Heng's brows furrowed slightly as he looked up. The person before him was Tang Ji. She was wearing a loose t-shirt, a pair of sports shorts, revealing a pair of long, fair, and beautiful legs. She wore sports shoes, with a pair of white high-top socks showing, making her ankles look particularly slender. Zhou Heng threw the basketball back to her and asked, "What's up? Let's play for a bit, see if your skills have gotten rusty." Tang Ji bounced the ball a couple of times, the corners of her eyes curving slightly as if smiling. Zhou Heng pointed with his hand and said, "Go play with those boys. They're no fun. Challenging you is more interesting. Are you scared?" Slap. Zhou Heng abruptly closed his book, set it aside, and stood up. "Don't be like when we were kids, cry your way home after losing. You'll have to beat me first before you can say that." Zhou Heng took off his school uniform jacket, wearing a short-sleeved shirt underneath, which made his firm chest muscles and thick arms unusually prominent. He and Tang Ji went to another basketball court together. The boys who were playing basketball over there suddenly glanced over, their eyes wide. One patted the person next to him and whispered, Hey, look, who's that over there, with such white legs?" Legs? Where? The boys on the court went crazy, searching everywhere. When they saw Tang Ji in the distance, their eyes widened just as much. "Wow, is that Tang Ji? Holy crap. Damn, I like long hair, but now that I see this. Short hair is fine too. No, short hair is better. Tang Ji is so stacked. Bro, I'm enlightened." The ball Lu Yunchua shot was no longer being contested by anyone and rolled to the side, leaving him stunned. He followed the others' gazes, and his eyeballs almost fell out. The three watching girls were a bit confused as to why all the boys had stopped to look in the same direction. But when their gazes followed, their level of astonishment was no less than the boys. Zhou Heng. Minran's heart trembled when she saw that it was Zhou Heng next to Tang Ji. It felt unexpected, yet somehow logical. As for Tong Yining, her brows were already tightly furrowed. She didn't know why, but she felt extremely annoyed. It was a feeling as if something had been snatched away from her. She bit her lip, a faint coldness in her deep eyes. Let's go have a look. What's going on? Are there a few more people around?" More than a few. Before Zhou Heng and Tang Ji even started playing, they saw the court surrounded by people. All the boys who were playing basketball over there had stopped and come over to look at legs. Look at the ball. Zhou Heng has such a good body. The attention of Tian Run and her two friends was focused on Zhou Heng. Seeing him now in a short-sleeved shirt that outlined his physique, they couldn't help but be surprised. I'm not sure. Tong Yining was also stunned. How did she never know before that Zhou Heng had such a good body? Was he like this before? Was this kind of physique hidden under his usual school uniform? Min Gran, on the other hand, knew about Zhou Heng's good physique. After all, the pajamas he wore every night were very form-fitting. Are we still playing? Zhou Heng felt a bit uncomfortable being watched by so many people and asked Tang Ji, "Since when did you start caring about what other people think?" "That's true. Let's go." Zhou Heng nodded and walked to face Tang Ji, passing the ball to her and getting ready to defend. Tang Ji started her offense, dribbling towards Zhou Heng, looking for an opportunity to break through. She was very agile, and her movements were swift. With her knees slightly bent and her center of gravity low, she held the ball between her chest and abdomen. The next second, she pushed off with the inner ball of her left foot, her body turning slightly to the right. Her left shoulder pressed down and forward, her center of gravity shifting to the front right, and her left foot stepped forward to the right side, guiding the ball to her right. Then she dribbled, pushing off with her right foot to stride forward and quickly bypass Zhou Heng. She followed with a jump shot. and the basketball fell precisely into the hoop. A beautiful crossover. That ball is so white. Oh no, those legs are so accurate. The boys on the sidelines erupted in applause for Tang Ji. Tang Ji looked at Zhou Heng with a faint smile and said softly, "How does it compare to before?" "There's improvement, but not much." Zhou Heng stretched his limbs and wrists, preparing for the next round. Their one-on-one match was very exciting. Both their defense and offense were outstanding, leaving the onlookers stunned. Moreover, Zhou Heng didn't use his physical advantage to break through at all, relying entirely on his technique. Otherwise, Tang Ji probably wouldn't have stood a chance. Zhou Heng had never played basketball with him before, so they didn't know he could play. Tang Ji was even more of a surprise. They couldn't understand how this girl could be so good at basketball. Kong Yu watched from the side, his mouth dry, feeling his throat parch. He never expected Tang Ji to have this side to her. With that kind of technique, she could probably crush him in a game. Liu Yunxua bit his lip in the back of the crowd, stamping his feet in frustration. He had wanted to show off in front of Yi Minggran, but how had it turned into Zhou Heng's show now? Every time Zhou Heng scored, Yi Minggran would clap along, watching with intense focus, a completely different state from when she was watching them play. And he had only just found out that Zhou Heng was so good at playing and had such a great body. Cough. Zhou Heng coughed, holding the ball and staring straight ahead. Their scores were neck and neck, but he now wanted to change that. At the very least, he wanted to pull ahead of Tang Ji by a bit. Without using his physical advantage, he really had no edge. Tang Ji's defense was excellent. In that case, the next second, Zhou Heng smashed the ball against the backboard. The moment Tang Ji turned her head, Zhou Heng moved, rushing forward. Before Tang Ji could react, he leaped up, caught the ball, and instantly slammed it down in a powerful dunk. Crack! With a shattering sound, the spiderweb-like cracks on the backboard instantly broke apart, and shards of glass scattered everywhere. Zhou Heng landed steadily, a look of bewilderment on his face. Whoa! The surrounding crowd let out a huge gasp of astonishment. Everyone's eyes went wide, their jaws dropping in shock. The girls were especially startled. It was the first time they had seen someone shatter that thing. Liu Yunxua and Kong Yu's eyes were turning red as they looked at Zhou Heng. How they wished it were them at this moment. If they had been the ones to shatter the backboard, such a serious matter would surely be announced to the whole school. Liu Yunxua thought about his own failed dunk attempt just moments ago and wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Tang Ji walked over, brushed the glass shards off Zhou Heng's body, and said, "All right, you win. It was enough to push you this far." TSK. Zhou Heng covered his head in frustration. He thought he wouldn't be affected by external distractions, but today he had actually gotten serious because of the crowd. So cool, wasn't it? Damn, when he jumped just now, I think I saw his abs. Tian Run excitedly shook Tong Yining's arm, acting like a little fangirl, jumping up and down. Tong Yining hadn't recovered yet, her eyes fixed on Zhou Heng, her pupils slightly dilated. She felt she had understood Zhou Heng quite well. Her previous impression of him was that he was uninteresting to talk to, had low emotional intelligence, poor grades, and was a rather boring guy. But now, why did it seem like she didn't know him at all? He was so good at basketball, such great athletic ability, such a good body under his clothes. And looking at him now, he seemed quite handsome. Yin Minggran looked at the many watching girls, some of whose gazes towards Zhou Heng even showed feelings of affection. She felt a strange sensation for some reason, perhaps a deep-seated unease. The gym class ended just like that. Zhou Heng took the initiative to admit his mistake. In the end, the school didn't make him pay for it, just gave him a simple verbal reprimand and had him clean up the mess. However, a legend about Zhou Heng had already started circulating within the school. Because the cheers were so loud, students in the classrooms had also heard it. Those near the windows had all looked out and seen the scene. After asking around, they learned that it was a third-year student named Zhou Heng who did it. The boys in his class were incredibly envious, but Zhou Heng seemed to think it wasn't a good thing. After he became conspicuous, it seemed that the way people looked at him had changed and the number of gazes had increased, especially from the girls. Whenever he walked by, they would stare at his chest and abdomen, which made him feel a bit creeped out. Now, he zipped his school uniform all the way up to his neck. Just then, Kong Yu came over to Zhou Heng and said softly, Sorry, Brother Zhou. I was wrong this morning. Please don't hold it against me." He had thought Liu Yunxua was blocking him to help Zhou Heng that morning, but now it seemed he was actually helping him. If he hadn't been stopped, he probably would have been shattered just like that backboard. Zhou Heng looked up at him, and seeing his apology, he shook his head and said, "I was never holding it against you in the first place." The day passed quickly, and it was time to leave school again. Jo-hung had a feeling that he would be cornered after school, whether it would be by boys or girls, and what for he didn't know, but he just had that feeling. So after school, Jo-hung packed his things and immediately evacuated the classroom. Seeing Jo-hung leave so quickly, In-min Gran felt a bit flustered. She also sped up, slinging her bag over her shoulder, preparing to follow. Hey, Ran, wait a minute. Let's walk together, okay? Tong Yining saw In-min Gran in such a hurry and quickly called out to her. But how could In-min Gran have time to wait for Tong Yining? And if she walked with her, wouldn't her situation of going back to Zhou Heng's house be easily exposed? So In-min Gran paused, left a sentence. No, I have something to do after school. I'm leaving first, and ran out of the classroom. Liu Yunxua, who wanted to follow, didn't even catch a glimpse of her shadow. Something to do? What could she possibly have to do this late? Tong Yining felt a bit strange. Thinking back, In-min-Gran's state had been a bit odd all day. She seemed a bit uncomfortable, as if she had something on her mind. But she knew that something had happened in In-min-Gran's family, so she didn't ask too much. But beyond that, it seemed like she had some unspeakable secret. In-min Gran chased all the way out of the school in the direction of Zhou Heng's home before she saw him. She quickly ran over to his side. Wait for me. Why are you walking so fast? Seeing the panting In-min Gran, Zhou Heng asked in surprise. Shem, what's your hurry? You know where my house is. You could have just walked slowly. Well. Hearing Zhou Heng say that, In-min Gran felt it seemed right. By chasing after him, there was a chance she could be seen and her secret discovered. So why was she in such a hurry to catch up? In her heart, it seemed she had been looking forward to being able to talk openly with Zhou Heng right after school. So without thinking, the moment she thought about walking back with Zhou Heng, she immediately chased after him. You're not hurt, are you? In-min Gran thought about all the glass shards that fell on Zhou Heng today and was afraid he might have been scratched, so she asked softly. No, that's good. All right, I finished all the food today. It was delicious. Good. Zhou Heng's one-word replies made In-min Gran's mood drop a little. She couldn't help but think about how naturally Zhou Heng had chatted with Tang Ji today. Why was it like this when he talked to her, but with Tang Ji, there were so many topics? Was it because Tang Ji was special? She had been thinking about this question for a long time today. It was the same during gym class. Zhou Heng didn't play basketball with the other boys and sat there reading by himself, but the moment Tang Ji went to find him, he went to play with her. Thus, her inner doubts made her unable to resist asking. I want to ask something. Don't get angry. Do you like Tang Ji? Zhou Heng frowned slightly and asked. Why would you think that? Is it because of what Kong you yelled today? No, it's because I see you chat with her very naturally, you can talk a lot, and you walk quite close. But with me it's a bit. In-min Gran felt a bit ashamed saying this, as if she were speaking out of jealousy. But if she didn't ask clearly, she would think about it for a long time. Zhou Heng shook his head and explained, That's because I'm not very familiar with you. I don't talk much with people I'm not familiar with. I'm very familiar with Tang Ji. Then, do you like her? In what way? As a friend, I like her a lot. She's my best friend because I don't really have any friends. I mean, in a romantic boyfriend-girlfriend way. No. Zhou Heng's answer was extremely firm, without a hint of hesitation. So firm that In-min Gran found it a bit hard to believe. Had he really not considered it at all? Really? But I feel you have a good relationship with her. Her grades are good, she's good-looking, and her athletic skills are so good. She seems to be no worse than Tong Yining in any aspect. You should like her, right? Have you never considered being with her? Zhou Heng shook his head again, denying it. No, my dad would kill me. Huh? Why? Because that would be a violation of ethics, to be with my own cousin. In-min Gran suddenly stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide with shock, looking completely horrified. She was petrified, as if struck by lightning. Go, cousin. In-min Gran chased after him again, her eyes wide as she exclaimed. Her mother is my aunt, my father's younger cousin. Tang Ji and I grew up together. You forgot she transferred to our class a few days after freshman year started? We weren't in the same class back then. She was specifically moved to our class later. Her mom was afraid she wouldn't make any friends with her personality, that she'd have no one to talk to, so she asked the teacher to arrange for us to be desk mates. Otherwise, why do you think we've been desk mates this whole time without changing seats? Zhou Heng's words made In-min Gran have a sudden realization, as if waking from a dream. No wonder Zhou Heng and Tang Ji seemed so close, so good. They grew up together. How could their relationship not be good? She even felt they were being a bit restrained, perhaps due to their personalities. Thinking about it, it made sense. Their relationship was so good, and their individual qualities were both excellent. yet they weren't together. Besides the possibility that they genuinely disliked something about each other, it was probably because of their family relationship. No wonder. Her athletic ability is just like yours, so good. So it's family genes. In-min Gran seemed to let out a sigh of relief, and the tone of their conversation became more relaxed. So, you understand what happened today, right? Someone shouting in public that you like your cousin. It's a good thing I didn't get angry. That wasn't angry? I thought you were already furious. It was quite scary. No, not even close. It's not worth getting angry over someone like that. If I were angry, I would have just slapped him in the face. In-min Gran pursed her lips and let out a soft laugh. Jo-hung turned to look at her and asked, "What are you laughing at?" "I'm telling the truth." "Nothing, it just feels. Like I've gotten to know you a little better, we're talking more." Jo-hung and In-min Gran went home together. Stepping through the door, In-min Gran surprisingly felt a sense of intimacy and belonging. She had only lived here for 2 days, yet it felt like she had been here for a long time, like she was treating this place as her own home. Perhaps it was the way Jo-hung treated her that reminded her of how it felt to be at home before. Jo-heng first went to make dinner. Normally, the school also served dinner, but neither of them ate it. Jo-hung always cooked for himself after coming home in the evening. In-min Gran felt she was truly blessed with good food because she really loved Jo-heng's cooking. It perfectly suited her taste. While Jo-hung was cooking, In-min Gran helped with the housework. Even though the house was already tidy, she would still find things to do. They ate together. At the dinner table, it was a bit silent. In-min Gran tried to find topics to chat with Jo-hung, but he seemed to have a don't talk while eating, don't speak in bed policy. He ate quickly and quietly, so she didn't disturb him any further. She also quickened her pace and finished dinner with him. After eating, she proactively cleared the table and washed the dishes. Jo-hung took off his jacket and walked to the bathroom door. Suddenly remembering something, he asked In-min Gran in the kitchen, "Do you want to take a shower?" A shower?" In-min Gran poked her head out, a faint blush on her cheeks. She saw Jo-hung standing at the bathroom door in his short-sleeved shirt. I don't need to, I'll wash outside." She couldn't bring herself to calmly shower in Jo-heng's home, so she had washed outside yesterday. She didn't dare even when Jo-hung wasn't home, let alone when he was. "All right, you can use the bathroom, it's fine. It has a lock," Jo-hung reminded her before walking into the bathroom. Okay." In-min Gran's reply was very soft, and her delicate earlobes turned red. After she finished cleaning up, she came out and sat at the desk, taking out her study materials to begin studying. Soon, she heard the sound of rushing water from the bathroom. The thought of Jo-hung showering at this moment involuntarily brought his physique to her mind. That inverted triangle, double-door physique, what would it look like when he was showering? No. In-min Gran shook her head, immediately pushing the thought away, scolding herself for thinking about such things. Although she forced herself to concentrate, when she came to her senses, the sound of water had just stopped. She immediately pretended to have been studying diligently, staring at her book, holding a pen, looking very serious. Soon, Jo-hung came out of the bathroom, wearing pajamas, his hair dripping wet, a towel over it. Because his body wasn't completely dry, the pajamas clung to his abdomen, making his well-defined abs particularly conspicuous. Although In-min Gran tried hard to focus, her gaze would unconsciously drift towards Jo-hung. Gulp! In-min Gran's eyes widened abruptly. She couldn't believe it. What was she doing? Did she just swallow her saliva? For real? No way. Was she this kind of person? From childhood until now, she had never been in a relationship, let alone had feelings for any boy. She thought she was the type of bookworm who only knew how to study, completely different from those who bravely pursued love during their adolescence. But now, why was her heart in such turmoil? Why couldn't she focus on her studies? Jo-hung didn't notice In-min Gran's strange behavior. He glanced at her and went to blow-dry his hair. In-min Gran patted her cheeks, forcing herself to calm down, to immerse herself in the ocean of knowledge, to become lost in it, to cast aside distracting thoughts, to forget all worldly desires. Buzz buzz. Just then, she heard Jo-heng's phone on the desk vibrate. She subconsciously followed the sound with her eyes and saw a new message notification on his screen. Tong. In-min Gran's heart couldn't help but tremble. She saw that the message was from someone named Tong Ening. Why is she messaging Jo-hung? Doesn't she find Jo-hung annoying? A strong curiosity arose in In-min Gran's heart. She had only seen who the message was from, but not the content. The thought of it being from Tong Ening made her desperately want to know what the message said. She reached out, wanting to touch Jo-heng's phone, just a glance. But her hand suddenly stopped in midair. She realized that this seemed wrong. It was like prying into someone else's privacy. What if the content was something inappropriate for her to see? She had only seen the screenshots from the old phone, which ended before the start of their third year of high school. She didn't know if they had chatted on Zhou Heng's new phone, or what they had talked about. After hesitating for a long time, In-min Gran pulled her hand back, deciding she couldn't do such a thing, even though she really wanted to know what Tong Yining had sent Zhou Heng. When Zhou Heng came back, he took out his workbook and prepared to start studying. In-min Gran spoke up a bit unnaturally in a small voice. Your phone vibrated just now. HM? Did it? Zhou Heng picked up his phone, opened it, and glanced at the message notification. His brow furrowed slightly. After just one look, he turned off the phone without replying. In-min Gran had been observing Zhou Heng's expression. This reaction made her even more curious. What could Tong Yining have sent Zhou Heng? Could it be that Tong Yining was confessing to Zhou Heng instead? That's not likely. She had seen the chat logs on her phone, and she knew Tong Yining's attitude at school today. It was clear she didn't want to be with Zhou Heng. At that moment, in Tong Yining's home, she was lying on her bed, holding her phone. On the screen was the message she had just sent to Zhou Heng. What are you doing? Just those 3 short words, but it had taken her a long time to decide to send them. In the past, Zhou Heng would have replied quickly. Even if he didn't reply immediately, he would explain why later. But now, half an hour had passed, and Zhou Heng still hadn't replied. She really wished for a read function right now, to know if Zhou Heng had seen the message or not. Had he not seen it yet? Or had he seen it and was choosing not to reply? Tong Yining reached out and slowly typed out a few words. Why are you ignoring me? She wanted to press send, but her finger wouldn't press down, as if engaged in a mental struggle. After a moment, she deleted the words, turned off her phone, lay flat on her bed, and covered her eyes with her arm. Seriously, it would be so much better if things were just like before. Why? Why did you have to change? Turning off the light now. In the middle of the night, the two returned to the bedroom to sleep. In-min Gran, having gone through it once and twice, was no longer worried on the third time. She was even very natural about it. After all, if Zhou Heng wanted to do something, he would have done it in the first 2 days. She had also come to understand Zhou Heng a little, knowing what kind of person he was, so she was no longer on guard. With the light off, she stared at the dark ceiling, her mind replaying the day's events. For her classmates, Zhou Heng was definitely the biggest star today, and he had given others a huge shock. They probably had already started to see him in a new light. But the most shocking thing for her was undoubtedly learning that Zhou Heng and Tang Ji were cousins. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed that Tang Ji had indeed transferred to their class not long after the start of their first year, and then became Zhou Heng's deskmate, a position she had held until now without change. Her impression of Tang Ji was actually quite similar to her impression of Zhou Heng. They were both the type who spoke little, weren't good at communicating, and had no friends. And she had indeed never seen Tang Ji hanging out with anyone. She would occasionally see her sitting at her own seat, doing who knows what. Tang Ji, she doesn't have any friends? In-min Gran suddenly spoke, her voice small. Though quiet, it was exceptionally clear in the silent bedroom. No. Then, if I take the initiative to talk to her, will she respond to me? In-min Gran had become interested in Tang Ji, even wanted to get to know her. It would be even better if they could become friends, but she was worried that Tang Ji didn't like interacting with others and would reject her. She will, but I suggest you don't befriend her. Huh? Why? In-min Gran was truly stunned for a moment. She thought she had misheard. Zhou Heng was silent for a long time before slowly speaking. If you spend too much time with her, I'm afraid your self-confidence will suffer. Huh? What? What does that mean? Nothing. Anyway, just don't get involved with her. She doesn't need any friends either. Zhou Heng turned over, changing the subject, as if he had held back some words. In-min Gran's curiosity was already piqued by Tong Yining's message and hadn't subsided yet. Now, with Zhou Heng being mysterious about Tang Ji, she couldn't stand it anymore. If she couldn't find out about this, she really wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. In-min Gran propped herself up with her arm, looked at Zhou Heng on the other side, and said seriously, "Just tell me. I'm definitely going to befriend her. You can rest assured." Zhou Heng opened his eyes, surprised by In-min Gran's determination. He hesitated for a moment, then sat up and turned on the light. All right. Zhou Heng sat up on the bed and started rummaging through something on the computer desk in front. In-min Gran also sat up, leaning against the headboard, wondering what Zhou Heng was looking for. After a while, he found a photo and handed it to In-min Gran. In-min Gran took it and saw a little girl in the photo, who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old, with long black hair, smiling brightly. What was extremely eye-catching was the stack of award certificates she was holding. She held a dozen certificates in her left hand and a trophy in her right. This is Tangji? Really? Min Gran found it hard to believe. The little girl in front of her was so different from Tangji. Putting aside the difference between long and short hair, just looking at her expression, she seemed like she was when she was a child, lively, cheerful, and loved to laugh. How did she become so cold now? What happened in between? Yes, really. Zhou Heng nodded and continued. She's the classic other people's child. She's the smartest kid I've ever met. She showed extremely high talent from a young age, mastering everything from music and chess to calligraphy and painting. She learned everything with ease, won every competition effortlessly, and her grades were always at the top since she was young. Your grades are in the top 5 of the grade, right? She's just not studying seriously right now. If she were to play games for 1 month less and focus on studying for a month, she would definitely surpass you. Is that so? Listening to Zhou Heng, Min Gran couldn't help but open her mouth in surprise. She knew Tang Ji was excellent, but she didn't expect her to be this excellent. I couldn't beat her in anything when we were growing up. With such high talent, her personality was particularly arrogant. She didn't even treat me as her cousin when we were kids, so for a long time, I even hated her. Zhou Heng sat there, his eyes deep as if recalling the past. In the end, I could only rely on the natural physical differences between boys and girls to teach her a lesson. Once, when we were kids, we played basketball and I won. That was the first time I had ever beaten her at something. She cried, but in contrast, I laughed, the happiest I had ever laughed. She was hit hard. She went back and immediately cut her hair short, just to surpass me in sports. Short hair would be more convenient. I understood that to defeat her, I had to use my own strengths against her. I started to introduce her to video games. Although she still had high talent and could quickly master any game, there was still a gap between us. She played hard, trying to catch up with me. I finally regained some self-confidence, and she finally started to see me as a rival. Her personality was no longer arrogant, and she slowly settled down. Zhou Heng threw her another photo. Min Gran saw that the photo was of Zhou Heng and Tang Ji, probably when they were in middle school, just a few years ago. It was Zhou Heng's birthday. Zhou Heng was making a wish with his eyes closed in front of cake, while Tang Ji was wearing Zhou Heng's birthday hat, sneakily eating the cake, caught on camera. I think your relationship is probably more solid than that of ordinary siblings. Min Gran returned the photo to Zhou Heng, a hint of envy in her eyes. She felt that Zhou Heng and Tang Ji's relationship was very good, which made her a bit envious, because she had never had such a friend or relative growing up. She also understood why neither of them had many friends. Perhaps for them, having each other was enough. Probably. Anyway, we've never fought. Zhou Heng put the photo back, then looked at Min Gran and said, "So do you understand now? It's tiring to be around someone like her. There's no need to befriend her. She doesn't need it." Min Gran shook her head gently, a smile playing on her lips. "No, now I want to be her friend even more. By learning from excellent people, I can improve." Tang Yining left her house and walked towards the school, though she wasn't in a good state. It looked like she hadn't slept much. She had waited for Zhou Heng's message until late last night. After about 2 hours, she concluded that Zhou Heng must have seen it and was deliberately not replying. At first, she was quite angry and planned to confront Zhou Heng at school. But on second thought, maybe Zhou Heng really wasn't going to pursue her anymore. If it were before, she might have been happy, thinking she had finally gotten rid of Zhou Heng. But now, for some reason, she felt a bit upset. She shouldn't like him, right? Otherwise, she wouldn't have kept rejecting him. So what was going on? These questions had troubled Tang Yining all night, so she didn't sleep well. She decided to ask Min Gran and Tian Run for their opinions at school. Maybe they could help. Yawn. Tang Yining yawned as she walked down the road, looking at the path ahead. It felt like it was still a long way to school. She really wished Zhou Heng would suddenly appear behind her, call out to her, and walk to school with her. That way, they could chat when it was just the two of them on the road. There was no such opportunity at school. But this was ultimately a fantasy. How could that be possible? Tang Yining's eyes suddenly widened. She saw a figure walk past her. Wasn't that silhouette Zhou Heng? Zhou Heng. She called out subconsciously. Zhou Heng heard her, turned his head to glance at her, then looked behind her before turning back and walking away directly. Hey! Before Tang Yining could say anything, another person appeared beside her. Morning, Tong Tong. What a coincidence to run into you here. Ran, you take this road too? How come I never saw you when we were going to school before? A flash of surprise crossed Tang Yining's eyes. The person next to her was actually Min Gran. She had just been calling for Zhou Heng. Did she hear it too? I moved. I live in that direction, so I take this road. Min Gran answered hesitantly, pointing in the direction behind her. Luckily, she had seen Tong Yining ahead just now, so she had deliberately slowed down and created some distance from Zhou Hong. Oh, what's wrong with you? Didn't you sleep well? You seem to have no energy. Min Gran looked at Tong Yining's appearance, which was just like her own a few days ago. Tong Yining nodded, responding listlessly, Yeah, I didn't sleep well. Min Gran thought about how Tong Yining had messaged Zhou Hong last night and received no reply. That must be why she didn't sleep well. So what did Tong Yining want? Had she had a change of heart and wanted to be with Zhou Hong now? The two of them arrived at school together and walked into the classroom to find it quite lively and noisy. What's going on? Min Gran asked Tian Run, who was sitting in her seat. Tian Run pointed towards Zhou Hong and his desk mate and said, Zhou Hong and Tang Ji are quite popular now. Min Gran and Tong Yining looked towards Zhou Hong and Tang Ji's direction and saw that people were constantly approaching the pair of desk mates, some to chat, others to give them things. Tang Ji, this is a snack I bought for you this morning here. Tang Ji, want to go play ball together this weekend? We're short one person. Why don't you come? Zhou Hong, we're going to sing karaoke this weekend. Are you coming? Zhou Hong, can you teach me how to play ball? The stream of boys and girls around the two never ceased, just like it had been around Min Gran yesterday. This level of popularity was like a disaster for these two. Since entering the classroom, their faces had been sullen, their brows furrowed, showing extreme impatience. Bang! Suddenly, Zhou Hong slammed his hand on the desk. Although it wasn't very heavy, the sound startled the others. The loud noise instantly silenced the classroom. Everyone felt a chill run down their spine. Zhou Hong and Tang Ji said nothing, but their faces were not pleasant to look at. Tang Ji, in particular, was already showing an expression of annoyance. Let's go, let's go. The people nearby quickly moved away from them and returned to their seats. These two were really not to be trifled with, and they didn't dare say anything. When there was no one around them anymore, their brows finally relaxed. Seeing this, Tian Run couldn't help but exclaim, They're really hard to get along with. No wonder they don't have any friends. I think they just don't want to make friends. They're probably not hard to get along with, just they don't like noise, and they're not very familiar with the other students. Min Gran subconsciously spoke up to defend them. She now knew the situation with Zhou Hong and Tang Ji. They didn't have any ill intentions, they just didn't like making friends with others, and their tempers were a bit peculiar. At least Zhou Hong was like that, and, as his relative, Tang Ji was probably the same. Tong Yining stared at Zhou Hong, with many things she wanted to say to him, but no opportunity to do so. She was, after all, the person he used to like. Couldn't she be the special one? She never expected that in just 3 days, Zhou Hong would go from revolving around her every day to having so many people revolving around him, while he was no longer by her side. She had originally planned to come to school to ask for Min Gran and Tian Run's opinions on how she should face Zhou Hong, but now it seemed that whether she asked or not was no longer important. If she wanted to ask, she had to ask Zhou Hong himself for it to be useful. But Zhou Hong was really cool yesterday. What do you guys think if I confess to him? Would he say yes? Tian Run looked at the two expectantly, trying to get the answer she wanted. Unfortunately, both of them shook their heads almost simultaneously, without any hesitation, causing Tian Run's face to fall. So rude. At this moment, Zhou Hong and Tang Ji were in a terrible mood. Yesterday, their area was a peaceful sanctuary, but how did it turn into a chaotic mess today? So annoying. Tang Ji couldn't help but mutter, then spat out the gum in her mouth. Zhou Hong looked at her and asked, What's going on? Did we do something? We just played a game of basketball yesterday, right? Is it that big of a deal? I don't know. They probably just like new things. They're not that familiar with us, so they want to try and get to know us. Then they should just look for you, right? Why are they looking for me? Aren't they familiar with me? They've been laughing at me for 2 years. After Zhou Hong finished speaking, he glanced at the source of his 2 years of ridicule, which was Tong Yining. He found that she was also staring at him. Their eyes met. The moment Tong Yining saw Zhou Hong's gaze meet hers, she felt her heart race, a bit nervous. She quickly turned her head away, a cherry-like blush spreading across her face. She placed her right hand gently on her chest and muttered, What's going on? After class, Tong Yining left her seat and immediately went to Min Gran's side. Ran, come with me, to the restroom. Oh, Min Gran was stunned for a moment, then stood up and left the classroom with Tong Yining. The two walked down the corridor towards the restroom, but Min Gran could tell from Tong Yining's expression that she seemed to have something to say. Otherwise, why would she call her out alone? In the past, it was always the three of them, with Tion Run, acting together. What's wrong? Just say what you want to say. In Min Gran saw right through Tong Yining's thoughts. Tong Yining glanced left and right. Seeing no one familiar around, she whispered into In Min Ran's ear that, I'm telling you, but don't tell anyone else. You know, I said before that I don't like Zhou Hong, but I don't know why. The more I look at him now, the more I like him. What's going on? Huh? Shoo. Keep your voice down. Don't you dare tell Tion Run. She'll definitely make fun of me. Tong Yining's face flushed crimson. Her large eyes suddenly filled with alarm. In Min Ran's expression was a little dazed, almost in disbelief. She thought about how Tong Yining had messaged Zhou Hong last night and how she hadn't seemed well this morning. It was really because her feelings for Zhou Hong had changed. Could it be? You've fallen for him? I don't know. If I say it's possible, will you laugh at me? Tong Yining looked at In Min Gran, a trace of unease in her eyes. Liking someone wasn't a big deal and wouldn't invite ridicule, but if she fell for someone she had rejected for 2 years, that was truly laughable. She herself found it a bit ridiculous. He had pursued her for 2 years, and she had never agreed. But yesterday, he showed off a little, and she was immediately moved? Wasn't that too shameless of her? I won't laugh at you, but I think this thought has come a bit too late. Zhou Hong is very popular now, and hasn't he gone a few days without confessing to you? Yeah, does he? Not like me anymore. Tong Yining's inner anxiety reached its peak. The first day, Zhou Hong didn't bother her. She was very happy. The second day, she felt something was off. By the third day, she actually started to feel uneasy. She really couldn't stand the test. What if this was just Zhou Hong playing hard to get? Then she would have fallen for the trick so easily. I think that's probably it. In Min Gran didn't dare to tell the truth. After all, when Tong Yining sent the message last night, she had witnessed it herself. Zhou Hong didn't care at all and had left it on read. That definitely meant he didn't like her anymore. But if she said it too directly now, it would surely hurt Tong Yining's feelings. Then what should I do? You could talk to Zhou Hong. Maybe there's a chance for a turnaround. Although In Min Gran knew Tong Yining had no chance, she still gave this suggestion, hoping she could face reality through this direct method. Being rejected by Zhou Hong in person would probably make her give up. Talk to Zhou Hong directly. Okay then, can you do me a favor? Help me tell Zhou Hong, at noon by the staircase I want to talk to him. Huh? Me? You want me to tell him? Why don't you go yourself? I don't dare, Tong Yining said awkwardly. She imagined that if she went, it would be in front of others, and she would definitely be watched and ridiculed. And if Zhou Hong rejected her on the spot, it would be even more embarrassing. Okay, I'll go tell him. But I can't guarantee he'll agree. In Min Gran hesitated for a moment, then agreed. After all, Tong Yining was her good friend, and she could help with this small favor. Great. Thank you. Tong Yining happily hugged In Min Gran, then turned and went back to the classroom. Hey, before In Min Gran could say anything else, she saw Tong Yining leave. She sighed helplessly, her mood complicated. As Tong Yining's friend, she should be hoping for her success. But for some reason, her heart didn't really want Tong Yining to succeed. She even found herself secretly praying that Zhou Hong wouldn't be swayed by Tong Yining and wouldn't agree. Just then, In Min Gran smelled a faint fragrance beside her. She looked up and saw a person brush past her. Tang Ji. In Min Gran looked at the person who had just walked by. It was Tang Ji. She remembered asking Zhou Hong about Tang Ji last night and saying she wanted to become her friend, but it was easier said than done. She had no idea how to get along with someone like Tang Ji. Although Tang Ji would respond if she initiated a conversation, forcing a chat without a topic would probably make them both feel awkward. Clatter! Just then, In Min Gran saw something fall from Tang Ji's pocket. She looked closely and saw it seemed to be a set of keys. The corridor was noisy, so Tang Ji hadn't noticed. She quickly walked over and picked up the keys. There was a small charm attached, probably merchandise from a game, though she didn't recognize it. Tang Ji. Tang Ji turned her head and saw In Min Gran standing behind her, looking a little puzzled. In Min Gran dangled the keys in her hand and said, "You dropped something?" Tang Ji felt her pocket and realized something was indeed missing. She walked over to In Min Gran and took the keys back. As she put them away, she reached into her other pocket, took something out, took In Min Gran's hand, and placed the item in her palm. Thanks. Then, after a soft word of thanks, she left. In Min Gran didn't even have time to say anything before she was gone. She looked at her palm and found that what Tang Ji had just given her was actually a lollipop. She knew that becoming friends with Tang Ji wasn't difficult, but she couldn't rush it. Tang Ji was like Zhou Hong. They were exceptionally cold to people they didn't know well, sometimes replying with just single words. But once he got familiar with them, you would find that they were very good people. The corners of Eun Myung-ran's eyes lifted slightly in a gentle smile. She put the lollipop in her pocket and turned to go back to the classroom. There was still some time before class. Tong Yining shot Eun Myung-ran a look, signaling her to go and talk to Zhou Hong. Eun Myung-ran saw that there was no one around Zhou Hong, so she stood up and walked towards him. As the class president with a good reputation, no one would gossip about her talking to anyone in the class, except for one person. Liu Yunxuo was sitting in a seat. When he saw Eun Myung-ran walking towards Zhou Hong, his heart tightened. Seeing how popular Zhou Hong was this morning had already made him tremble with fear. He was afraid to see Eun Myung-ran by Zhou Hang's side. Thankfully, it seemed Eun Myung-ran wasn't getting too close to him. If he saw Eun Myung-ran and Zhou Hong walking closely, even side by side, he would be heartbroken. He had just been feeling relieved, but now he was actually seeing Eun Myung-ran walk towards Zhou Hong. If he just sat here and did nothing, wouldn't he lose his chance? Eun Myung-ran reached Zhou Hang's side and said softly, Zhou Hong, I have something to tell you. Zhou Hong looked up at Eun Myung-ran, then replied faintly, go on. He had already been pestered to death this morning. It wasn't that he was intentionally being cold, but who asked these people to be the ones who had laughed at him for 2 years? When he had wanted to get along with them before, they treated him like a joke. Now that he wanted some peace and quiet to study and catch up, this group of people was suddenly flocking to him. He was still feeling irritable. It was only because he looked up and saw it was Eun Myung-ran that he responded. If it had been anyone else, he really wouldn't have bothered. Ahem. Eun Myung-ran, there's a problem I don't understand. Can you teach me? At that moment, Liu Yunxuo suddenly ran over with a workbook, stopping her from speaking. Eun Myung-ran was abruptly stunned, her train of thought completely derailed. She looked at Liu Yunxuo with a blank expression. Although many people came to her for help because she was easygoing and had good grades, they should at least consider the timing, right? She was talking to someone right now, and what she was about to say was a particularly sensitive topic. For Tong Yining's sake, no one else could know. How could she possibly say it now? Oh, you're talking to Zhou Hong. It's okay, you go first, I'm not in a hurry. Liu Yunxuo added, pretending not to disturb their conversation, but he didn't step back. He just stood there to the side. He was going to listen right here, to see what Eun Myung-ran was going to say. Only then would he know where he stood. Could you? TSK. Eun Myung-ran looked troubled, unable to get the words out. If she said it and Liu Yunxuo overheard, it would definitely be spread around. Then Tong Yining would be embarrassed, and Zhou Hong would be in a difficult position. She knew very well that Zhou Hong didn't want to be a laughingstock anymore, didn't want to be the subject of others' discussions. So this matter definitely couldn't be heard by Liu Yunxuo, but she was too embarrassed to ask Liu Yunxuo to step away, as that would make it seem like she was about to say something scandalous, and it would be twisted into something strange. Zhou Hong looked up, glanced at the troubled Eun Myung-ran, then at the unyielding Liu Yunxuo. The next second, he suddenly stood up, grabbed Eun Myung-ran's wrist with one hand, and under Liu Yunxuo's wide-eyed stare, Zhou Hong led Eun Myung-ran out of the classroom. Eun Myung-ran was completely dumbfounded. The feeling of being grabbed by Zhou Hong was just like the feeling of being dragged home by him in the heavy rain. Tong Yining had been secretly observing the situation. After seeing this scene, her mouth fell wide open, her eyes filled with disbelief. Liu Yunxuo was even more stunned, his mouth twitching, his eyebrows jumping wildly. He had let Zhou Hong drag Eun Myung-ran away, right in front of him. At this time, Zhou Hong had brought Eun Myung-ran to the stairwell, where no one was passing by. Zhou Hong let go of her hand, looked at Eun Myung-ran, and said, all right, say it. You. What's wrong? Aren't you afraid people will spread rumors? They'll misunderstand you. Eun Myung-ran lowered her head and said softly. The thought of Zhou Hong pulling her out of the classroom just now made her heart race. Zhou Hong closed his eyes and spoke slowly. Are you asking someone who's been laughed at for 2 years if he's afraid of rumors? Should I be afraid? No. As for you, if you're afraid of being misunderstood, I'll go back and explain to them later. Eun Myung-ran waved her hands repeatedly and explained, oh no, I'm even less afraid. She knew her current situation. She was already all alone. She wasn't afraid of having her reputation ruined. So how could she be afraid of rumors? Then that's settled. All right, what did you want to say? Say it quickly. Class is about to start. Okay, I'm just a messenger. It's Tong Tong. She wants to talk to you alone. She wants to meet you at noon. Right here. I refuse. Tell her there's nothing to talk about. Zhou Hong shook his head and refused directly, without even a moment's consideration. Eun Myung-ran had already anticipated this result. In fact, based on her understanding of Zhou Hong, This was the most likely outcome. You're really not going to talk to her? Maybe. After you talk, she'll get together with you. Then I have even less reason to talk to her. Think about it. I chased her for 2 years, and she didn't agree. Now that I've stopped chasing her for just 3 days, she wants to talk, and I'm supposed to turn back? That would make me seem pretty cheap. That's true. All right then. I'll let her know. MHM. After they finished talking, they left and returned to the classroom. As soon as he went back, Zhou Heng felt eyes on him, but he didn't care at all and returned to his seat. Tang Ji tapped her desk with a pen. When Zhou Heng sat down, she asked, "When did you get so close with the class president? How can you tell we're close? If you weren't close, you'd grab her wrist and run out? Aren't you afraid she'd slap you and call you a hooligan?" Zhou Heng glanced at her and said, "You're overthinking it. I know she's a good person and wouldn't do that, so I dared to do it. If it were someone else, I wouldn't have dared." Fine. Tang Ji believed Zhou Heng's words. As for what he and Yin Gran had talked about outside, she didn't ask, nor did she want to, although she knew that if she asked, Zhou Heng would definitely tell her. Some people didn't want to know, but others were dying to know. Liu Yinshuo was sitting on pins and needles. He felt like ants were crawling all over him. He desperately wanted to know what Zhou Heng and Yin Gran had talked about, but he couldn't have followed them out just now, as that would have made his intentions too obvious, and he would have been disliked. What made him most upset was that Zhou Heng had grabbed Yimingran's wrist, and Yin Gran hadn't even resisted, but had accepted it. Tang Yining was the other witness. Although she was shocked by Zhou Heng's actions just now, she also knew what the two of them had gone out to talk about. So now she was eagerly awaiting good news from Yin Gran. Class started soon. When the next break came, Tang Yining eagerly went to Yimingran's side. Ran, how was it?" she asked in a low voice, her tone and eyes filled with anticipation. But seeing that Yimingran's expression was not right, her heart sank. Tong, you should just give up on Zhou Heng. Didn't you say it yourself, that you two aren't suitable?" He refused, didn't he? Tang Yining's eyes fell, and she felt a tightness in them, an urge to cry. She didn't feel wronged, just that she had brought this upon herself. After all, it wasn't a missed opportunity. It was right in front of her, and she had ignored it for 2 years. Fate seemed to be playing a joke on her. She hadn't liked him for 2 years, but just a few days after he stopped liking her, she started to become interested in him. Yin Gran didn't know how to comfort her. She gently shook her head and said, "It's okay. You're so pretty. When you get to university, many people will like you. It's already the 3rd year of high school. Even if you did get together with Zhou Heng, with your grades, you might not get into the same university. A long-distance relationship would be even more painful then." MHM. Tang Yining didn't know what to do either, so she could only listen to Yimingran's comfort. What else could she do? Shamelessly beg Zhou Heng to come back? Just a moment ago, she was still thinking about what to say to Zhou Heng at noon, but now, all those thoughts were useless. He wasn't even willing to talk to her. What's wrong? Tian Run came over to them, looking puzzled at Tang Yining's pale face. But Yin Gran gently tugged on Tian Run's hand, signaling her not to ask. Tian Run obediently kept her mouth shut. But since it was about Tang Yining, she had a rough idea that it was probably related to Zhou Heng. At noon, it was time for lunch. Yin Gran happily took out the bento box Zhou Heng had prepared. She never used to look forward to lunch because she ate very little and even felt that eating was a waste of time. But now, she felt that lunchtime was what she looked forward to the most. When the lunch break was almost over, most of the students had returned to the classroom. Just then, the head teacher walked in and stood at the podium. "All right, I have 2 things to announce. First, we're having our monthly exam next Tuesday. Everyone, study hard and strive for a good score. Second, at the end of the month, we'll have our school's sports meet. This will be your last sports meet in high school." Whoa. Upon hearing about the sports meet, the students let out excited noises. For them, the pressure of school life was too great. The 2-day sports meet was undoubtedly the best opportunity for them to relax and have fun. The events for the sports meet are all here. Sign up voluntarily. There's also the opening ceremony performance. This time, it's entirely up to you to discuss and decide. Class president, sports committee member, I'm leaving these 2 matters to you. The head teacher handed the forms to Yin Gran, who was sitting in the front, and then left the classroom. The next second, a crowd swarmed over, ready to join in the excitement. Of course, Liu Yinshuo was among them. After all, he was the sports committee member. The moment he heard he could be in charge of this with Yin Gran, his spirits immediately lifted. The people around were chattering about something, making Yimingran's ears buzz. The classroom was in chaos. All right. Yin Gran quickly stopped the people around her. Looking at them, she said, The sports meet is at the end of the month. There's plenty of time. What's more important right now is next Tuesday's monthly exam. Those who want to sign up for events can do so. The rest of you, focus on studying. As for the opening ceremony performance, we'll talk about it after the monthly exam. Hearing Min Gran say this, Liu Yinchuo quickly backed her up, echoing, right, listen to the class president. All of you go back. If you want to sign up for an event, come to me. Tang Ji was woken up by the noise. She lifted her head, her eyes drowsy, and looked at Zhou Hong beside her, asking, what's going on? Monthly exam next Tuesday, sports meet at the end of the month. Tang Ji yawned and said, oh, can we take leave for the sports meet? Let's just go to the internet cafe. Otherwise, it'll be too boring. Probably not. Compared to the sports meet, I'm more worried about what to do for the monthly exam. Zhou Hong held his head in his hands, already getting a headache. The weight of being ranked over 200th in the grade was truly heavy. He had to improve his ranking by 50 places this time, and Zhou Hong had no confidence at all. Do you need me to come over to your place this weekend to help you study? No thanks. I can't keep up with your way of thinking. Zhou Hong thought about how even with Min Gran explaining problems, it took him a long time to understand. Having Tang Ji teach him, she wasn't cut out for teaching at all. She would just give him the answer and tell him to figure out the process himself. All right then. Looks like you can't play tonight either. Huh? I was thinking there's an event today. We could go to the internet cafe for a bit after school. Forget it. You can play at home. I really don't have time to play anymore. Then I'll just log into your account and do the quest for you. Fine. After school, Zhou Hong left the school to go home. Min Gran didn't rush to follow him. She knew where Zhou Heng's home was anyway. She walked with Tong Yining and Tian Run for a while, said goodbye to them on the road, and returned to Zhou Heng's house alone. After knocking and entering, she found Zhou Hong was already making dinner. While they were eating together, Min Gran wanted to find a topic of conversation, so she asked, the sports meet? Are you interested? You're so good at sports. Aren't you going to sign up for an event? Min Gran remembered that Zhou Hong hadn't participated in the sports meet in the past 2 years. At that time, she didn't know he was good at sports. Now that she knew, she certainly didn't want to let a talent like Zhou Hong go to waste. If he competed, he could definitely win a few gold medals. Zhou Hong shook his head and said, not interested. What about Tang Ji? Do you think she'd be willing to participate? Min Gran didn't give up. She thought of Tang Ji. After all, Tang Ji's athletic ability was on par with Zhou Heng's. Participating in the women's events would surely be no problem. It would be a miracle if she didn't feign illness and take leave that day. You want her to sign up for an event? Impossible. Min Gran became interested, raised her eyebrows, and asked, oh, why is it so impossible? I can even make a bet with you. If she participates, then I'll participate. How about that? Okay, it's a deal. Min Gran didn't even know if she could persuade Tang Ji. But if she could, she'd get a bonus Zhou Hong, adding 2 great champions to their team. How could they not win? So she agreed without a second thought. After dinner, Zhou Hong and Min Gran were studying at the table. Zhou Hong was now racing against time. With Min Gran's help, he wouldn't get stuck anywhere, and his study efficiency was high. Min Gran glanced at the time, looked at Zhou Heng's side profile, and seemed to want to say something but hesitated. After a few seconds, she slowly opened her mouth and asked softly, can I go take a shower? Of course, go ahead. Zhou Heng couldn't help but be a little stunned. If she wanted a shower, she should just go. Why was she asking him? Okay, I'll go then. Min Gran slowly got up and went to the bathroom. It was her first time showering at Zhou Heng's house, and she was a little nervous. She had prepared her things and brought a change of clothes, just in case she forgot something and couldn't ask Zhou Heng to bring it to her. She locked the bathroom door and looked at the things Zhou Heng used for showering. Although she had bought toiletries, it was just a toothbrush, towel, and so on. She hadn't bought shampoo or body wash. Since she was going to shower, she would have to borrow Zhou Heng's things. She opened the bathroom door, poked her head out, and looked at Zhou Heng at the table, asking in a small voice, can I use your shampoo, body wash, and things like that? You can. Zhou Heng didn't look up as he replied. It was no big deal to him. After getting permission, Min Gran closed the door. Soon, the sound of water came from the bathroom. Although the door was locked tight, the thought of Zhou Heng sitting right outside made Min Gran's heart pound. She used Zhou Heng's body wash, the lather gliding over her skin, and the scent was the same one she smelled when lying in bed. After her shower, she dried her hair in the bathroom and walked out, finding Zhou Heng still sitting there studying, his posture unchanged. She felt that Zhou Heng was working a bit too hard. At this rate, he would probably get tired. After all, studying isn't something that can be done overnight. Balancing work and rest is important. I see you have a computer in your room. Do you not usually play on it? I do, but I have an exam coming up, so I don't have time to play. Zhou Heng thought about how he used to play on the computer as soon as he got home, playing with Tang Ji. But she never fell behind in her studies. With her smart brain, she learned everything in class with ease. She would play with him at home, and he ended up ranked over 200th, while she, playing with him all the time and even going to internet cafes, ranked in the top 20 of the grade. No matter how much he tried to drag her down with games, she could still rank so high. He was truly at a loss. He couldn't compete with her, and he couldn't even drag her down. Actually, you can play for a bit. There's no need to study all the time. You'll get tired. Why don't you take a break and play for a while? Yin Mingran knew she couldn't persuade Zhou Heng. His stubbornness was something she couldn't match. But after she said this, Zhou Heng actually hesitated and stopped writing. He looked up at Yin Mingran and asked tentatively, "Really? It's really okay? Of course. You've been studying for so long. You should play for a bit. This is to relax your mind, so you can study better. Then, I'll listen to you." Ahem, just for a little while. Zhou Heng immediately stood up and went to his room. He hadn't played any games since that day. He went to the internet cafe with Tang Ji. Hearing Tang Ji talk about the game every day had made him itch to play. Now that Yin Mingran said it was okay to play for a while, of course he would listen to her advice. The words of the top student in the class, top 5 in the grade, couldn't be wrong, right? No way. Yin Mingran was stunned. She didn't expect Zhou Heng to actually listen to her. Or was it that he really wanted to play on the computer too? She had never seen Zhou Heng use the computer, so she had assumed he didn't usually play. Yin Mingran followed him into the room and saw Zhou Heng already sitting in front of the computer, having turned it on. She sat on the bed, wanting to see what game Zhou Heng played, but the game he opened was something she couldn't understand at all. Zhou Heng seemed to open a chat window with someone, typed a few words, and then she saw him put the headset on the desk and turn the volume all the way up. "Hello, can you hear me?" Exclamation point. Yin Mingran was a little surprised. The voice coming from the headset was Tang Ji's. "Yeah, I can hear you. How come you're online today? Aren't you busy studying? Balancing work and rest? Then come help me with a quest. I've invited you to the party." Yin Mingran watched quietly from the side. Seeing Zhou Heng so engrossed in the game, she didn't dare to make a sound, afraid that Tang Ji on the other end of the headset would hear her. "Hi, Mom. What are you doing?" Just then, Yin Mingran suddenly heard a sound from Tang Ji on the headset, and she even called out, "Mom." Then, the voice from the headset changed to a woman's voice. "Is that Xiao Heng?" When Zhou Heng heard it, his eyes widened and his eyebrows shot up. He quickly replied, "Ah, yes, Auntie, it's Xiao Heng." Zhou Heng's voice was very soft and cautious. It was the first time Yin Mingran had heard Zhou Heng speak like this, and it felt like she was getting to know another side of him, which was very interesting. "See, I thought it sounded like you. When are you coming to visit? Your uncle and I miss you. Come over, and Annie will cook for you." "Ah, Auntie, I'll go next weekend. All right, it's a deal. I'll buy groceries next weekend then. Don't you dare not show up." "Okay, I'll definitely go." Yin Mingran listened from the side, a trace of envy involuntarily showing in her eyes. This was the feeling of having relatives, someone who cares, someone who is concerned. Even living alone here, there was someone thinking of him. Unlike herself, the thought of what had happened to her recently made her heart ache with grief. Yin Mingran's head drooped, her long hair spilling over her chest, revealing a section of her slender, graceful neck. Her heart felt a sharp pain, like a knife twisting, then a wave of heat, and her eyes were instantly clouded by a misty veil. Zhou Heng's eyes flickered, and he saw Yin Mingran's state. After a moment, he said into the headset, "All right, I'm logging off. Bye-bye." Then, Zhou Heng turned off the game and the computer. Yin Mingran quickly turned her head away, not wanting Zhou Heng to see her current state. Even though she was trying to look forward, thinking about the past still made her cry. What could she do? She was just a girl who had barely reached adulthood. After turning off the computer, Zhou Heng looked at her and said softly, "I think you need to talk to me." "Talk? Talk about what?" As soon as Yin Mingran spoke, the tears she was holding back fell. Her nose stung, so her voice came out muffled. "Of course, talk about your situation. You must have a lot of things you haven't explained clearly, for example, why you have nowhere to live." Although Zhou Heng had always had these questions in his heart, he had been afraid of touching a sore spot for Yin Mingran, so he had never asked. Today, he felt that Yin Mingran should let it out. At least having someone to listen would make it a little better. Otherwise, she would always be bearing the sadness and pain alone, with no one to understand. I don't want to talk about it." Yin Mingran buried her head low, tears falling incessantly as she sobbed softly. She had already put these things behind her, determined not to bring them up again. Today was just a case of being moved by the scene. If she could forget these things forever, she would do so without hesitation. Zhou Hong seemed to have guessed that Yin Min Gran didn't want to speak. He stood up, walked to the side of the bed, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Didn't you say you wanted to look forward? Then you definitely need to talk it out. Why bear the sadness alone? You could talk to me anytime. At least you'll have someone who understands how you feel. Yin Min Gran looked up, tears still clinging to her eyelashes. But seeing the look in Zhou Heng's eyes, her sorrow, for some reason, lessened by half. I have nowhere to live. Because I no longer have a home. That home doesn't belong to me, and I can't live there anymore. Then who does it belong to? Zhou Heng was a little confused. It seemed there was a hidden story here. He got some tissues for Yin Min Gran to wipe her tears. After her emotions had calmed down a bit, she finally spoke slowly. My family is a remarried one. I was brought over by my mother. My father, he also had a child, but the child was with his ex-wife. After they passed away, my dad's ex-wife came with his son and took the house. Because her name is on the property deed. She's a co-owner. When they divorced, she didn't want the house, but now they've come back to claim it. There's nothing I can do, so I have nowhere to live. Zhou Heng's eyebrows nearly knitted together, his expression turning ugly. Taking advantage of a tragedy? There are people that despicable? So she doesn't plan to give you any compensation? Yin Min Gran shook her head, utterly disappointed. Zhou Heng also felt that his question was pointless. If she could stoop to taking advantage of the situation, how could she possibly have a change of heart? When my mom remarried my dad, none of the relatives agreed. So now, no relatives are willing to help me. Behind my back, they all call me a wild child. What about your biological father? I can't find him. I have no contact information. I haven't seen him in many years. And even if I did, he wouldn't care about me. After saying it all, Yin Min Gran's emotions had clearly stabilized. Perhaps keeping these words bottled up inside had been too much for her to bear. Now that she had voiced them, she felt much more at ease. Zhou Heng nodded silently beside her, having understood Yin Min Gran's troubles. He had never imagined that Yin Min Gran was shouldering such a heavy burden. He had originally thought that Yin Min Gran couldn't move on, cried often, and couldn't face reality, lacking a bit in mental fortitude. But now his view had changed. He had changed his opinion of Yin Min Gran. After experiencing all this, being left with nowhere to go in a heavy rainstorm, possibly not even surviving the night, all she did was cry, just using that method to vent her stress and sorrow. She didn't retaliate against society, didn't give up on herself, didn't commit suicide. Now she could even attend school normally and show a smiling face. Zhou Heng felt she was already strong enough, so strong that he looked at her with new eyes, with special admiration. Thinking of this, Zhou Heng had already made a decision in his heart. Since fate had arranged for him to help Yin Min Gran, he couldn't let her stagnate or let all her previous efforts go to waste. Such an excellent girl would surely have a promising future, at least more promising than his own. She shouldn't have her future cut short by these external factors. That would be too much of a pity. Even he felt it was a great pity. Zhou Heng patted Yin Min Gran's shoulder and said, "Don't think about anything. You don't have to worry about a thing. I'll take care of your food and lodging. You don't have to worry about living expenses either. I'll give them to you until you can get a job and support yourself. Just focus on your studies and live a good life, that's all." Yin Min Gran looked up, her eyes instantly filled with shock. Her entire face was a picture of disbelief, her mouth hanging open, unable to close. "I can't bear to see such a good student be crushed by life. Don't worry, my family is pretty well off. They give me a lot of allowance every month. If you play games, you could tell from my in-game equipment. I'll split my monthly allowance with you." Yin Min Gran quickly waved her hands in refusal. No, no, no. How could I? We're just classmates. For you to do this for me, I can't accept it. She couldn't believe Zhou Heng would make such a promise to her. They were just high school classmates, and they had barely known each other for the past 2 years at school. And now Zhou Heng was saying he would support her? All right, don't argue with me. You know you can't win against me. My biggest weakness is my stubbornness. Yin Min Gran knew this was true. She couldn't out-argue Zhou Heng. And now that she was living under his roof, the first rule was to listen to the master of the house. She lowered her head, her voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Then, "What do you need me to do?" "Do, MHM. After a man starts taking care of a woman, don't they usually do something?" Yin Min Gran knew that if she accepted, she would have to offer something in return. There's no such thing as a free lunch. As she said this, her face flushed red to the tips of her ears, and she didn't dare to look Zhou Heng in the eye. Zhou Heng rubbed his chin and said calmly, The term taking care of isn't quite accurate, but I do need you to do something. You, you say it. Imran's face was about to drip blood. Like a startled fawn, her whole body trembled slightly, but she still managed to force the words out of her throat. For her now, this opportunity was too good to pass up. She had to survive before she could think about other things like studying, dignity, or even her body. If it were anyone else, she probably would have refused without a second thought. But since it was Zhou Heng, her heart calmly accepted it. Zhou Heng nodded and said, "MHM, my family said that if my ranking in this monthly exam doesn't go up by 50 places, they'll cut my allowance. So for the sake of our living expenses, you'll help me study. Help me improve my grades before the monthly exam."